marvelous long reads.
Ultimate Wolverine is an alternate version of Wolverine featured in the Ultimate X-Men comics, and some other spin-offs. These events take place on Earth 1610, where life evolved drastically different from Earth 616. We will be following the journey of Wolverine as he fights some of his worst foes, including Hulk and Magneto. Let's get to it. Ultimate X-Men number 2, Magneto's Plot. Logan lands at the JFK International Airport and is greeted by his pickup, who holds up a sign named John Doe. Wolverine walks out with the man as he wonders how Wolverine was simply able to waltz out of the airport without even triggering the metal detectors, despite having an adamantium skeleton. Logan simply tells the representative from the Brotherhood of Mutants that he is a professional and airport security is not even a threat to him. The man offers Wolverine the help from the Brotherhood, but Logan tells him that he likes to work alone. Logan continues to walk while the man has to rush after him. Unbeknownst to Logan and the man, the entire airport is crawling with Weapon X agents, and they are ready to take out the two men. As Logan continues to talk, we learn that he has been hired by Magneto to murder Charles Xavier. But before they can reach their designated vehicle, Logan sniffs the air and he can smell a familiar scent. The scent of a Weapon X agent that has a history of torturing him. But before Logan can move a muscle, he and the representatives sent by Magneto are shot by hundreds of bullets. Wolverine and the kid lie motionless in the parking lot, covered in blood. The kid is definitely dead, but Logan might still be alive thanks to his healing factor. We then see Blackbird zooming through the skies above New York City. It is being flown by Marvel Girl, while Hank McCoy, aka Beast, tinkers with the plane outside. It's not every day that even a tech genius like him gets the chance to tinker with $1 billion investment like the Blackbird. Once Hank is done, he steps inside and asks Marvel Girl about what has been going on between her and Cyclops. She tells Hank that things have been slow and Cyclops has simply been trying to gather up the courage to ask her out over the past 6 months. We then see the Blackbird approach Xavier's Institute for Gifted Youngsters, where Iceman and Cyclops are training outside. Hank and Marvel Girl then talk about Hank's relationship with Storm, and how he's facing strong competition from Colossus when it comes to wooing Aurora. Hank jokes that Marvel Girl shouldn't be using her powers to spy on people's private lives, but then Marvel Girl quips back that she doesn't need to use her powers to familiarize herself with the obvious. Sadly, what's waiting for them inside isn't a pretty sight. The professor is quite serious because he has a mission for them. He shows them holographic footage of a military convoy headed for Canada that is carrying the world's deadliest killer, Wolverine. The entire gang is shocked to their core because until now, Wolverine was only a myth. Aurora doesn't know anything about Wolverine, which is why all of them proceed to tell her all about him. Cyclops tells her about Wolverine's past, his healing factor, how he was captured and exploited by the military for his mutant powers, and how Logan managed to escape a few months ago from the clutches of the military. He then shows Aurora the only image of Wolverine that exists, a blurred, shoddy image from the Gulf War that proves his existence. Apart from this, the man is a myth, rumored to exist and supposedly responsible for endless bloodshed around the world. The professor then takes over and addresses the elephant in the room, Iceman. It's only been a few weeks since Iceman joined them, which is why Professor Xavier wants to respect his wishes in case Bobby wants to back out of this operation. Bobby thanks the professor, but because the X-Men saved his life from the Sentinels back in Times Square, it's about time he repaid his debt. The entire gang is energized by Bobby's response and they exit the base with renewed vigor. We now head to the other side of the city in Syracuse, New York, where the military convoy is steadily progressing through the rough terrain of the country. Inside an armored container is a makeshift prison cell, and inside is Wolverine, who is now slowly regaining consciousness thanks to his healing factor. A seemingly insignificant officer mocks and grills Wolverine from the outside, but as Wolverine regains his senses, he knows exactly who the man is. It is Colonel John Wraith, the man who tortured and exploited Wolverine while he was captured by Weapon X. The very next second, Wolverine tries to cut through the bars with a single swipe, but his claws simply clang and resonate against the metal without harming it one bit. Colonel Wraith laughs and then goes on to reveal to Wolverine that his cell is made from the same material that coats his entire skeleton, adamantium. He then grabs the gun from a rookie soldier, loads it up with live bullets, and then begins firing at Logan without a care for his safety. He then goes on to tell his soldiers that they used to do this all the time when they had captured Wolverine, back during the days of his Weapon X experimentation. The colonel then tells his soldiers that they can stab him, shoot him, and cut him, but Wolverine's healing factor will always fix him by the next day. Wolverine tries to call John Wraith the inhumane man he is, but the colonel instantly shoots him a few times again again while screaming at him, "You watch your mouth, muddy." His soldiers, now emboldened, pick up their guns, ready to try out their new form of entertainment. Colonel Wraith goes on to encourage his soldiers to have as much fun as they like, because the next day they plan to wipe his mind as soon as they reach the base. The soldiers begin shooting up Wolverine, but then the driver outside spots something quite scary. There is a blackbird parked in front of him right in the middle of the road, and standing in front of it is the entire X-Men team. Lit by the stars of the shining night and the underglow of the blackbird, the X-Men look menacing to say the least. Iceman, Marvel Girl, Storm, Colossus, and Beast stand ready for action, as Scott gives them their first order. "Blow them away, Storm!" Storm extends her hands and then concentrates. Within seconds, the entire military convoy is engulfed in an ice storm, and soon, their vehicles and men start flying away. Scott takes advantage of this chaos by ordering Beast and Colossus to rescue Wolverine, while the rest of them engage the remaining forces. Once they get inside, Colossus tries to use his super strength to free Wolverine, but then is soon shamed by Logan for not realizing that the bars are made from adamantium. Meanwhile, Colonel Wraith is busy escaping the scene without a care for his men, with Private Leibowitz in his tow, who is shocked by the Colonel's actions. Back inside the container, Beast is busy hacking the terminal to free Wolverine, and as soon as he succeeds, Wolverine dashes out of his cell, grabs a bike, and then flees the scene with exceeding haste. Everyone stands around baffled by Wolverine's escape, when Scott orders them all to stop gawking and start chasing. Inside the Hummer that Colonel Wraith is using for his escape, he is busy screaming at Private Leibowitz to go faster. Then suddenly the private's eyes widen with surprise, and then horror as he sees Wolverine already standing in front of them in the middle of the road. Private Leibowitz loses control due to the sheer panic induced by Wolverine, and the next moment the Hummer is flying off a cliff and crashing head-on into a tree. The force of the impact sends both Colonel and Private flying out of the windshield. The two of them slide around 15 feet in the snow before coming to a stop, and when Colonel Wraith manages to raise his head, he is greeted by the horrific sight of Private Leibowitz's decapitated head, riddled with glass from the windshield, lying in front of him. Logan is about to rip Colonel Wraith to shreds when suddenly Marvel Girl and the rest of the X-Men burst onto the scene. Marvel Girl tries to convince Wolverine to not kill the Colonel, but when he tries to quit back at her by digging his claws into Wraith's face, Marvel Girl is forced to use her powers. She picks Logan up and slams him into a nearby tree with ease using her psychic powers. Logan is instantly knocked out, and for a moment it seems Colonel Wraith is going to thank Marvel Girl. But before that happens, Marvel Girl speaks up. "If you even think about thanking me for saving your life, I swear to God, I'll implant my best homemade nightmares in your brain for the rest of your natural existence. Filth." On the other side of the world, in Savage Land, in the headquarters of the Brotherhood of Mutants, Magneto is busy discussing his plans for world domination with his council members, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Toad. Toad is surprised that the X-Men were able to not only intercept Wolverine but also rescue him, and that is when Magneto reveals his true plans. He was the one that got Logan caught in the first place, and it was all so that the X-Men would rescue him and take him to their base, because that would allow Wolverine to get closer to Charles Xavier in order to do his real job, the one for which he was hired by Magneto, to murder the Professor. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch look on with surprise as an ominous live feed of the White House begins projecting in the center of the table. Ultimate X-Men number 3, Beast is Dead. The issue opens up in New York City, which is being patrolled by hundreds of Sentinels flying through the air. On the ground, Colossus, Storm, and Iceman make their way through the city while wearing protective clothes specially designed by the Professor to hide their mutant DNA signatures from the Sentinels. They discuss at length the recent crackdown being conducted by the government against mutant kind. Anti-mutant sentiment is at an all-time high, and they and the rest of the X-Men are forced to stay hidden in plain sight. Iceman and Storm don't like staying confined, but Colossus seems to have grown used to it. He likes staying at the mansion because he doesn't have to pretend to be human when he is around his own kind. They then discuss Wolverine, and Storm tells everyone that she loathes him. She can't help but feel that he is thinking of ways to murder each one of them whenever he stares them down. The three of them pass through an alley, and we see how much the mutants are now hated thanks to the recent events. The alley is littered with garbage and graffiti spewing anti-mutant hate. The only good mutant is a dead mutant. Muty equals duty, die mutie scum, kill the mutants. And such graffiti is plastered across most walls in New York. Back at the Xavier Institute for Gifted Children, Wolverine is busy training in the Danger Room against the X-Men. He makes easy work of all of them, but once he is done, he is reminded by the professor that he is supposed to wrestle his fellow X-Men's simulations in these projections in the Danger Room and not hack them to death. Wolverine sheepishly apologizes as he is joined by Marvel Girl and Cyclops. The two of them, along with Charles, wonder why Wolverine has stuck with them for so long. He has more than enough skills to survive out there on his own, and the X-Men don't exactly offer him anything fruitful. We then see Logan remember his true directive, a hazy flashback of the moment Magneto lit a cigar for him and sent him on his most vital mission, to murder Charles Xavier. We learn that Logan is one of the few people who can shield his thoughts from the professor, which is why Magneto chose him for the job. Back in the present day, Logan snaps out of his vision and simply tells everyone that he enjoys being around them and the mansion, which is why he is stuck with them. Suddenly, Bobby comes rushing in and tells everyone to watch the news. They turn towards the nearest screen only to find a news reporter informing them of the worst possible news. The president's daughter has been kidnapped and the responsibility has been claimed by the Brotherhood. We then see the news channel broadcast Magneto's message for everyone to see. 113 mutants have been murdered by the Sentinels, all in an effort by your president to halt evolution. But the next mutant kill? It shall be followed by the execution of his foul-mouthed female calf. This is my one and only warning. I have nothing more to say. The silence which gripped the X-Mansion moments ago is now taken over by sheer and utter chaos, as Charles and his students discuss how they should proceed. Charles wants his X-Men to go and rescue the president's daughter, but most of them think that's a bad idea. Storm is the first one to speak up. She too hates Magneto, but at least he has found a way to stop the mutant killings happening across the country. Beast and Colossus agree with her, but Charles implores them to see the truth. They need to stand up to Magneto and show the world that good mutants exist as well. They need to show the world that the only way for both species to survive is to coexist peacefully. If she or anyone else decides to turn back on this mission now, then they may as well go ahead and sign up for Magneto's Brotherhood. They all look towards their leader Cyclops, who hates it, but has to agree with what the professor is saying. He too wants to see the Sentinels taken out, but he implores everyone to see that they can't let Magneto use an innocent girl as a bargaining chip. Marvel Girl asks Wolverine if he'll be joining them for his first taste of action in the field, and Logan nods in agreement while smoking his cigar. A few hours have passed and we now catch up with X-Men in Croatia. Marvel Girl has used Cerebro to track down the president's daughter to this precise location, but she isn't alone. Marvel Girl is in the Blackbird high up in the air, and she tells everyone that the Brotherhood's jet will be back in 18 minutes. She gives them 13 minutes to finish with the rescue operation so that they have 5 minutes to spare for their escape. Down below in Croatia, the president's daughter is being guarded by Quicksilver, Mastermind, the Scarlet Witch, Toad, and the Blob. Beast keeps a close eye on them, and once he has ensured the villains don't suspect a thing, he gives the go-ahead to Colossus. Colossus is in the basement, and he surprises the Brotherhood by ripping out one of the foundational pillars of the building. Hank uses this distraction to take out Toad and the Blob, while Cyclops rushes into the scene with a car. We then see Hank jump out of the balcony with the president's daughter on his back, while Iceman uses his powers to create a slide that propels them towards Cyclops. Hank helps the president's daughter to get into the car, and within seconds, Cyclops is driving away with her. Despite the plan going perfectly, Cyclops' car is soon brought to a halt by Quicksilver, who rushes in and steals the keys. Cyclops uses his optic blast to launch Pietro away from him, and before Quicksilver can react, he is ambushed by Wolverine. Wolverine then slices at Pietro's back to maintain his cover, when suddenly Scott is taken out by Toad, who leaps onto him and smashes him into the street below. He then takes out Storm, but before he can do any more damage, he is frozen mid-leap by Iceman. Iceman helps Scott to get to his feet, and Storm then rushes in and kicks Toad directly in the face. Wolverine, meanwhile, has escaped with the president's daughter in a police cruiser, but they aren't out of the danger zone yet because Wanda is sending out huge explosions around them. Wolverine and Marvel Girl discuss a far-fetched escape plan and decide to execute it. Before Wanda can take out the car, Wolverine accelerates the police cruiser to 120 miles per hour and jumps it off of a cliff. Marvel Girl rushes in with Blackbird and manages to catch the police cruiser in the nick of time. The president's daughter has been saved, and this is the first time we see Jean and Logan flirt with each other. Down on the ground, Scott compliments Logan for the rescue, but things soon turn dire when they spot the Brotherhood's jet and Magneto lands on the ground. Scott orders everyone to evacuate before anyone gets injured, but he is interrupted by Storm, who says, "It's too late for that now." We then see Storm looking at a collapsed burning building, and trapped in its debris is Hank, seemingly dead from his injuries. The story so far. Since being rescued by the X-Men, Wolverine has been busy showing them up by taking each of them head-on in the danger room. Wolverine manages to defeat all the X-Men and establish his dominance during the process. The Brotherhood of Mutants, meanwhile, is busy carrying out their nefarious plans, and they start by kidnapping the President's daughter. This starts a fight between the Brotherhood and the X-Men, which is only stopped when Magneto joins in. Magneto lets the X-Men escape so that Wolverine can carry out his job, but that is when Logan falls for Jean, and the two of them end up kissing. This whole thing is witnessed by Scott, who in a fit of rage leaves the X-Men and ends up joining the Brotherhood of Mutants instead. During this time, Quicksilver and Cyclops are quickly established as the interim leaders of the Brotherhood. They both lead an attack from the Brotherhood on the Parliament. During this time, the X-Men visit the White House, and during their time together, Wolverine ends up confessing to Jean that he wanted to kill the Professor. Due to the recent assault by the Brotherhood, the American government ends up attacking the Savage Land, and this forces Magneto to reprogram the Sentinels. Magneto then flies off with the intention to kill all Homo sapiens in America, and this forces Scott to rethink his choices. Cyclops decides to leave the Brotherhood in pursuit of Magneto, and this is where our story picks back up again. Ultimate X-Men number 6, Sun's Betrayal. We pick up with Jean and Logan, who were enjoying a nice time together until Wolverine decided to confess his true intentions about killing Professor Xavier. Now, Marvel Girl is hurling everything she's got at him and is promising to kill Logan if he tries to hurt the Professor. She slams Logan into a nearby mirror, and the aftermath of their confrontation reveals that the entire room has been trashed. Logan tries to tell Jean that he intended to kill the Professor before he heard the big man talk or kiss Jean. Now that he has, he is convinced by the Professor's mission to have mutants and humans coexist with each other. But Jean is too angry to believe that Logan is a changed man. She is about to smack him in the face with a candlestick when suddenly both of them hear the Professor's voice booming in their skulls. Turns out that the Professor is telepathically reaching out to every human and mutant living in Washington because he is delivering a warning message to them. He informs everyone that Magneto is coming to Washington, D.C. with his reprogrammed Sentinels, and he will reach his destination in about 2 hours. He asks every citizen of the city to evacuate in an orderly fashion. The military has been notified, and they will be helping with the evacuation. Meanwhile, Charles and the X-Men will do everything in their power to protect all the citizens. Charles stands with his X-Men in front of the Lincoln statue at the Lincoln Memorial. Meanwhile, in the Savage Land, Cyclops has decided to ditch the Brotherhood and head home to his friends, the X-Men. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch try to reason with Scott that it is already too late. By now, Magneto is halfway across the world and about to reach Washington, D.C. in an hour. Even if Scott leaves now, he won't be able to catch up to Magneto and his Sentinels in time. But that is when an angry Scott turns around and holds Pietro by the shoulders and screams, "I might not be fast enough to get there in time, but you are Quicksilver. Isn't it about time you stood up to your freaking dad for once in your life anyway, you little snot?" Back in Washington City, Magneto stands atop a water tower while ordering his Sentinels to kill anything and everything in sight. The Sentinels begin destroying the city while a huge number of them focus their firepower directly on the White House. In the absence of Scott, Marvel Girl is leading the X-Men on the ground. She orders Beast and Colossus to take care of the people on the ground while Iceman and Storm act as supporting units to the Air Force. She tells everyone that they have a lot of work to do because she can count at least 300 to 400 Sentinels in the air. Colossus is about to be stepped on by a Sentinel, but that is when Jean jumps in and fulfills her role as a leader. All Piotr needs right now is some motivation, and she gives him exactly that. "You're 500 pounds of organic steel Colossus and one of the world's most powerful mutants. You can flatten diamonds between your fingertips, for God's sake." And these words are more than enough because the Sentinel that was about to crush Colossus just moments ago has now been tossed into the air by Colossus. We then see the Air Force's jets being massacred by the Sentinels, and this prompts Marvel Girl to question Storm's whereabouts. We then see Storm use her powers in a new way to create ball lightning and instantly take out a dozen Sentinels. It's then revealed that Beast lent her a book on atmospheric anomalies, and Storm used it to learn about obscure weather phenomena that she could use to her advantage. The best part of using ball lightning? Storm doesn't even need to be in the middle of the fight to use it. We then see Storm using her powers from outside the White House while keeping herself safe. Storm continues taking down Sentinel after Sentinel, and the fight finally seems to be going in the X-Men's favor. That's when Wolverine rides in on a bike and heads straight for the White House. Meanwhile, Magneto is executing the next phase of his plan, which is broadcasting his brutality for the entire world to see. He has dozens of cameras pointed at himself, and in front of him on the ground lies a naked president of the United States who licks Magneto's feet in order to end this insanity. Magneto proclaims to the world that humans have lost, and the reign of mutants over Homo sapiens will now begin. He says that he will execute the president now so that other world leaders will obey him. Humans that obey the commands of the mutants can live as slaves, while the ones that decide to disobey will be obliterated. America dies tonight at the age of 225. Your intolerance and all-consuming greed will not be missed. Magneto then uses his powers to lift the president's car high up in the air, and then with equal force he brings it down on top of the president. Thankfully, before the car can hit its intended mark, it splits into two, creating a small opening to save the president in the nick of time. Magneto's eyes widen with surprise because there is only one person that has this kind of power in the world: Charles Xavier. "You and I need to have a serious talk, Erik." But Magneto is here on a mission, his last mission, and he won't let anything stand in the way of it, not even Charles himself. He picks up the broken car's debris using his powers and hurls it at the professor, vowing to leave Charles more injured than ever. Back on the outside, Beast is busy saving kids, but for some reason, it seems that every Sentinel is focused on him. Beast narrowly avoids each blast thrown his way until Iceman decides to step in and freeze every Sentinel attacking Beast. Back inside the White House compound, Magneto is using his powers to pick up every gun he can find in his vicinity, while still using dozens of cameras to broadcast to the world. He is about to make an example out of the professor when suddenly Wolverine jumps into action and uses his claws to stab Magneto directly in the back. Magneto screams in pain, but Wolverine continues cutting into his flesh until a large wound forms in Magneto's chest. Magneto doesn't understand what's happening until Wolverine spells it out for him. He tells Magneto that he has switched sides and is now working for Charles Xavier because he is promising peace between mutants and humans. Magneto turns over and then starts getting up as he tells Wolverine, "You know, I think I liked you a lot better when you were cynical and heartless, Wolverine." Wolverine doesn't realize it yet, but while on the ground, Magneto was using his powers and forming a plan to retaliate. The next second, a huge metal pipe stabs Wolverine directly in the back. Magneto knows that today's battle is lost, but he doesn't plan to come quietly. "Tearing open my vitals might have stopped Homo Superior from inheriting the Earth today, but I'd rather burn in 1,000 hells tonight than just hand it over to Homo sapiens." And as Magneto utters his last words, he sends a huge magnetic pulse coursing through the entire United States, specifically targeted at military bases housing the US's entire nuclear arsenal. Back on the outside, Marvel Girl relays this information to Quicksilver, who has managed to reach Washington, D.C. in the nick of time. Nuclear missiles begin launching from around the United States, and there is only one man that can stop this. Only one man that is fast enough to get close to Erik. The next second, a huge blast of air rushes past Magneto, and before he can react, it's all over. Quicksilver has stolen Magneto's helmet, and he is now susceptible to Charles's powers. Cowering with fear, Erik looks up to confront his worst nightmare: Charles Xavier finally inside his mind. Charles begins the impending assault on Erik's mind, and the man that once used to be Magneto now begins to scream and writhe around like a child in pain. On the outside, Storm is confused when she sees every piece of metal in their vicinity slowly heading for Magneto. Jean explains to her that Charles is using Magneto's powers against him and is turning him into a super magnet. Magneto continues to scream as he now begins to beg for his life. "Charles, please, I'm begging. Spare my life and I swear I'll think any thoughts you want." But the professor doesn't stop. The approaching pieces of metal begin encasing Magneto, and soon there's nothing left but a large ball of metal. He sends the ball high up in the air and then causes Magneto to use the same huge magnetic pulse that he used to trigger the nuclear missiles. This renders the launched missiles inoperable, and most of all, seemingly kills Magneto in the process. Ominously, the next page opens up on a panel of Xavier's Institute for Gifted Children somewhere in the near future. Charles Xavier is welcoming Scott back into the X-Men, and Scott is apologizing for unceremoniously storming off. He then tells Scott that Wolverine too is is a part of the X-Men now, but he is taking some time off to rediscover his past. He also implies that Wolverine and Jean broke up when Logan left, and a sly smile spreads across Scott's face. Scott continues walking the professor outside to watch the sunset, and they pass Beast, Storm, and Jean, busy playing video games, while Piotr plays the guitar in the background. Scott can't believe that for once, when Magneto was killed, the people finally cheered for the X-Men. He is so used to being assaulted when out in public that the whole event from Washington feels like a fever dream. Scott and the professor enjoy a glass of sparkling wine while the sun sets in the background, as we get to know that Charles has a far more grander plan in the works for his X-Men. Eliminating the Sentinels, getting rid of the Brotherhood, getting Homo sapiens to trust him was just the first phase of his plan. Phase 2 begins now, and it promises to be a lot more interesting. Ultimate Origins number 3, Erik meets Charles. Captain America's origins are widely popular. He was part of the Project Rebirth and was granted superpowers by a serum created by the project's chief architect, Dr. Erskine. Sadly, after Captain America's rebirth, Dr. Erskine was assassinated by a Nazi spy. But unbeknownst to most people involved in this project, including Captain America, something mysterious was happening inside the laboratory that was kept hidden by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Upon Captain America's birth and after Dr. Erskine's death, a mysterious obelisk appeared inside the lab. This obelisk was simply stored away in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Project Pegasus and forgotten for many decades to come. But now, after all these years, the obelisk has activated itself again, and the acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Carol Danvers, has called in Reed Richards to check it out. Now that we're all caught up, let's get to the story. We start our story in Wyoming at the base of Project Pegasus. Reed Richards and Sue Storm examine the obelisk while being accompanied by Jonathan Storm and Ben Grimm. The obelisk is an ominous spire with what looks like an eye directly at the top of it. The eye seems to move around and gather information while Sue and Richards speculate what the obelisk could be. At first, they feel it is a reconnaissance drone, but upon checking their equipment, they realize that it isn't broadcasting anything. This leaves only one theory on the table, a theory that neither of them likes. The obelisk could be alive. It might be a sentient being. Reed Richards fears the worst once they arrive at this conclusion, which is why he promptly requests Director Danvers to evacuate the building. When Director Danvers asks what has prompted Reed to make such a drastic request, Reed points out the origins of the obelisk. You see, the obelisk was discovered around the time of World War II, which could only mean that it's a weapon. Anything developed on Earth during that time, be it by the Allies or by the Axis countries, was a weapon, which is likely to be the case with the obelisk. If, however, it hasn't been created on Earth, then it is likely an alien artifact that has just activated itself, which can't mean anything good either. Director Danvers rushes out of the base while consulting Reed Richards and the rest of the Fantastic Four on what to do with the obelisk. The interim director wants to throw the obelisk out of the planet, but Reed Richards asks her to use all the resources at her disposal to examine it thoroughly. Director Danvers heeds his advice and orders Wendell Vaughn from the Project Pegasus to get all the information they have on the obelisk. There is a paper trail that leads the obelisk to this base, and she wants Vaughn to trace it to its source. She wants to know how it got here, who found it, and most importantly, how she can send it back to where it came from. Vaughn gets to work, but Danvers is soon interrupted by an agent asking her to take an urgent call. Meanwhile, around the world, we see what the urgent call was all about. Obelisks, similar to the one stored at the Pegasus base, have now started sprouting up and appearing around the United States. Obelisks are now reported to have sprouted in Tony Stark's mansion, at the Triskelion S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, at the Xavier's Institute for Gifted Youngsters, as well as the Baxter Building, the home of the Fantastic Four. As Director Danvers continues receiving calls, she soon realizes that the obelisks have started appearing around the world. We see obelisks appear at the Daily Bugle, London, inside Peter Parker's attic, and in other parts of the world. The Fantastic Four look on with anticipation as they watch Director Danvers' worst fears become true in front of her eyes. We then switch to Alberta, Canada, 27 years ago, where a man is suspended in green liquid while being attached to seemingly a million hoses. A long-haired blonde man stands outside the man staring at him, and once a good chunk of time has passed, he utters the words, "Get up." The man in the tank leaps out of the water screaming with rage and pain, and we soon learn that it is none other than Wolverine himself. The man outside orders Wolverine to stand down while claiming that he knows about all the horrific and inhumane testing Wolverine has been through. He then goes on to reveal Wolverine's true identity. "Your name is James. James. Not Weapon X, not Mutant X. James. Do you remember that? Do you?" Wolverine does not speak. He only growls in response to the man and then lashes out. This breaks apart every equipment attached to Wolverine when we heard a disembodied voice scream for the blonde man. "Erik, please." This is Erik Lencher, aka Magneto in his early days. We then see Erik's mother walk inside with armed guards in her tow. She asks her son to stand down, but that is when Erik rebels by lifting every piece of metal in his vicinity using his powers. "Mother, you look scared? Are you scared of me, Mother?" Erik then sends the debris flying at the armed men and takes them out instantly. This prompts his mother to proclaim that she is indeed afraid of him right now, and that is when Erik reveals her true nature to us. Erik's mother is the head of the Weapon X program, and she has spent the past few months relentlessly torturing Wolverine, or at least that's how Erik sees it. Erik's mother, on the other hand, sees mutants as human beings with a disease, and she wants to cure them all, including Erik. But Erik has no intention of losing his powers. He wishes his mother one last goodbye, and then kills her on the spot. After this flashback, we move ahead in time precisely 9 years. Charles is busy teaching a class of students about Shakespeare when he is approached by a mysterious man. It's Erik, and he is communicating with Charles using his mind. He knows that Charles is reading the minds of his students and manipulating them so that they pay attention. Once Charles hears Erik telepathically talking to him, he is instantly intrigued. People have been able to talk to him in the past, but he has always been able to read their minds. But to Charles's surprise, Erik is different. His mind seems shrouded behind a veil that Charles can't seem to penetrate. Erik then invites Charles for lunch and leaves the classroom. Once Charles finishes his class, he catches up with Erik and learns that Erik has unique telepathic abilities. He can tell when a mutant is using his powers, which is how he managed to detect Charles. But this isn't the reason Erik is here to meet him. Erik has read Charles's book about a mutant utopia, and he wants to turn Charles's dream into reality. Charles then asks Erik to demonstrate his powers, and Erik obliges. He points his left hand towards a few nearby trash bins and crushes them into a metal ball. Charles is impressed, but also wary. He's scared because he can't read Erik's mind. This has never happened before. Erik goes on to speculate that maybe their powers cancel each other out, which is why Charles can't read his mind. Charles runs a few tests and tries to probe Erik's mind, but soon he realizes that Erik is telling the truth. He isn't shielding his mind from Charles, at least not intentionally. Charles then relaxes a bit and tells Erik that this is a nice change of pace for him. Usually he can read everyone's minds and can know the end of a conversation even before it has begun. But with Erik, he can now have a real conversation because he can't read Erik's mind. Erik again implies that he wants to make Charles's vision a reality and promises to return when his plan to make a mutant utopia is in motion. 2 years later, we see Erik leading Charles into the Savage Land. Charles finds the land to be more than beautiful. It is the perfect piece of untouched earth on the planet. Charles is apprehensive when Erik tries to tell him that this is where all their plans come to fruition, but then reluctantly decides to follow Erik as he leads him to meet his former students. Erik leads Charles into a huge cave where a group of mutants, Erik's new students, have been studying and thriving in an attempt to create a mutant society. All of this is too much for Charles to take in, as he tells Erik and the rest of them, but it's one thing to fantasize about a mutant society, it's another thing to write about. But now that we are here, the real thing. But before Charles can complete, he is interrupted by Erik, who tells him about his parents, how Erik's parents were Canadian Weapon X agents, the same agents that found the first mutant. "You were there when they found Wolverine?" "Yes, I was born into a relatively normal life. Then one day, I turned 13 and made the silverware dance. Next thing you know, my father got drunk and tried to kill me." Charles looks on with sympathy in his eyes as more and more mutants gather around them to hear Erik's story. Erik tells everyone that as his father shot at him, he instinctively turned the bullet around mid-flight and sent it back towards his father. Erik remembers how he had no control over his powers back then, how this was all just a defense mechanism. It was that day, the day Erik used his powers for the first time, that he learned what his parents did for a living. That is the day Erik broke into the Weapon X facility and freed Wolverine. Erik gets a devilish look in his eyes as he tells everyone that the day he freed Wolverine, he knew he had found his calling. His calling was to free every mutant in this world, fight for their lives, and give everyone a glimpse of what it actually means to be free in this world. Charles can feel the vibes changing in the room. He can feel the hatred Erik harbors against the humans, and so, in an attempt to change the subject, he asks if Wolverine will ever come to the Savage Land. This is of course a trick question to have Erik spill out his hatred, but Erik seems too smart or seems to genuinely believe in what he's doing, because he goes on to tell Charles that he won't force Wolverine to stay with them. After being imprisoned for so long in the Weapon X program, Wolverine is free to choose his own path. He is of course always welcome to the Savage Land, but asking him to stay here with them would be just like imprisoning him again. again. My point is, as my parents illustrated to me, the reason we're here and not there is because the humans are simply not ready for us yet, but they will be, eventually. Erik then shows Charles the book he wrote and how he too calls for the forced education for humans in his own words. No, I said education of mutants is part of it. Education of the human masses is another. Erik waves off Charles's objection by asking him to focus on one step at a time. He then asks Charles to show him the vision of the school that he has dreamed about for so long. Charles stares at Erik for a while and then agrees. As he begins to show Erik his vision for the school for gifted youngsters, Erik tosses a few pieces of metal in the air and then concentrates powerfully. Soon, Charles gasps with surprise as he watches Erik turn the pieces of metal into a huge structure within seconds. During this time, unbeknownst to everyone, even the mutants on the island, an obelisk, the one similar to the one found in the Pegasus headquarters, has been keeping an eye on Erik and his students, his mutants that would eventually go on to form the Brotherhood. Ultimates number 3, Wolverine's Daughter. The Ultimates is a superhero team originally assembled by the United States government, which was later adopted by billionaire Tony Stark to operate out of his private mansion on 5th Avenue. The team consists of Captain America, Iron Man, the Wasp, Thor, and Hawkeye. Recently, they were joined by Black Panther, Valkyrie, Quicksilver, and the Scarlet Witch. Valkyrie was powerless until 6 weeks ago, dreaming of becoming a superhero. And now, she possesses the powers of an ancient goddess. Black Panther remains all the more mysterious by staying silent most of the time. Nobody knows his agenda except the fact that he has some long-lost connection to Captain America. Right now, the team is recovering from Tony Stark's recent sex scandal. After the revelation of the scandal, the team was attacked by Massive Venom, who was taken down using a lightning strike conjured by Thor, which turned the symbiote into protoplasmic ooze. Hank Pym, the Wasp's husband, was under house arrest when one day he was discovered to have overdosed on his medication. Other team members have also been facing their own issues. The worst hit is Quicksilver, who was in pursuit of a high-tech bullet that managed to evade him and instead killed his sister, the Scarlet Witch. Before the team could regroup and find out more about the high-tech bullet, they were attacked by the terrorist organization known as the Brotherhood, which is led by Magneto. During this chaos, Magneto managed to convince Quicksilver to leave the Ultimates and join him instead. Once convinced, Quicksilver left the mansion with the body of his dead sister without informing any of the heroes. Which is why, now that Wolverine is at the mansion, everyone is arguing about how Wanda could be so easily killed. Wolverine points out that it was way too convenient for the Brotherhood to attack and keep them occupied while someone escaped with Wanda's body. Wasp gives in and asks Wolverine how he thinks all of this happened, and it is then that Wolverine tells them his theory. Pietro betrayed them all. Wolverine points out that Magneto needed an inside man to pull off this job, and the only one currently missing is Pietro. Hawkeye doesn't like what Wolverine is saying because he was close to Pietro. He tries to undermine Wolverine by saying, "Didn't you used to belong to the Brotherhood? Didn't you used to have a wife and 2 kids, Barton?" That's it. Nobody talks about Clint's family without getting a bullet to the face. Wolverine and Hawkeye go at each other with incredible force until Wolverine manages to pin Barton against a wall with his claws underneath his chin. "It'd be kinda hard to aim at anything without a head, Barton." "Do it then. I'm better off dead anyways." Wolverine lets Hawkeye go and he is confronted by his teammates on his suicidal nature, but their pleas are only met with denial and more anger. Thor has to interrupt this argument between Wasp, Hawkeye, and Captain America to force them to see the truth. Their anger is misdirected and they shouldn't be fighting amongst themselves. They should focus on the Brotherhood and how Wanda was killed. Wolverine agrees with Thor and tells everyone that they should confront Magneto. Wasp wants to know why Wolverine wants to help them so badly, and that is when James, aka Logan, reveals that he suspects that Wanda could have been his daughter. Do you even know why Pietro guarded Wanda so diligently? A flashback starts as we hear Wolverine tell everyone about this time after the war, how he was searching the Balkan Mountains all on his own for a myth, a legend about the Wundagore Mountain. Wolverine traveled for days, endured for hours until his body finally gave up and he succumbed to his hardships. But that is when he found it, the Wundagore Mountain, and along with it, a beautiful witch named Wagda, who would later go on to become Pietro and Wanda's mother. Now that Wolverine remembers his past, he can see the striking resemblance between Wanda and Wagda. Wolverine then goes on to confess that he was looking for the Wundagore Mountain to find Wagda, the famed witch of the mountain. the one with supposedly enough power to even end Wolverine's suffering, someone with the power to end Wolverine's life. But that night, the night she found Wolverine, the two ended up making love to each other, until the front door was broken down by Erik and Charles, aka Magneto. Without a second thought, Erik used his powers that night to not only cast Wolverine out of his house, but also down the Wundagore mountain. Decades later, Wolverine would get to see Wagda's face again, but only this time it was her daughter, Wanda. Wolverine met the two kids and Magneto in the Savage Land when Magneto gave Wolverine the awful task of killing his only son. Logan would later learn from Charles that Magneto was so hard on Pietro because he was a constant reminder to Magneto that he had slept with a human. The next day, when Logan attacked Pietro while roaming the woods of the Savage Land, he learned why Pietro protected his sister with all his life. It's because he wasn't protecting her from the outside world, he was protecting the outside world from her. Once Wolverine manages to stab Pietro in the shoulder, he gets a glimpse into Wanda's true powers. Instinctively, the Scarlet Witch conjures a huge portal that transcends time and space, and soon the portal lets in numerous bloodthirsty dinosaurs. "You will leave my brother alone!" And Wolverine didn't need to be told twice. He leaps away from Pietro and bounds away into the forest while Wanda takes care of her brother. Pietro tells Wanda not to worry about her powers. They can simply tell the world that the dinosaurs were the result of a genetic experiment gone wrong courtesy of their father, Magneto. The two then get close while promising to take care of each other, and it is revealed that the two of them have been involved in an incestuous relationship. Wolverine says that the two kids shared a bond that no one in this room can understand, and Barton replies, "I don't want to understand. It's sick. I knew Wanda. I worked with her at S.H.I.E.L.D. We should all be glad this happened before it got out to the media." The Ultimates then spring into action and split up into two teams. Wolverine, Valkyrie, Thor, and Black Panther will head to the Savage Land and confront the Brotherhood alongside some of Logan's mysterious friends that he promises will help them. Meanwhile, Captain America, Iron Man, and the Wasp will remain in New York. Once the first team has departed for the Savage Land, Wasp meets up with Tony to find out more about the high-tech bullet. Tony is acting rather cryptic and responding to questions with vague answers. Wasp overlooks this by thinking that he could just be rattled from his recent fight with the Blob. She then goes on to ask him about the high-tech bullet that killed Wanda, and Tony reveals that the bullet is DNA specific and was designed to solely target the Scarlet Witch. Any idea who makes something like this? Yes, I do. It was made by Stark Industries. Janet is shocked and suspects that Tony has been betrayed by one of his employees, but sadly, that's not the case. Iron Man removes his faceplate only to reveal not Tony, but a machine inside it. "Who said anything about me being Tony?" And the machine then zaps and incapacitates Janet with ease. Back on the other side of the globe, our heroes have managed to land in the Savage Land. Valkyrie is awestruck by the dinosaur while Wolverine hangs back to have a word with the Black Panther. He doesn't like the brooding and silent Black Panther, and he isn't afraid to express his opinions. Once the two of them are done, they walk outside only to be greeted by Wolverine's mysterious friends in the Savage Land, Shana and Khazar. Ultimate X-Men number 20, Charles Quits. A lot has happened since we last caught up with the Ultimate X-Men. Charles' son, David, aka Proteus, had possessed the telepath Betsy Braddock and lured the X-Men to Berlin. During this confrontation, Betsy managed to regain control of her mind and body momentarily and begged the X-Men to kill her before things got worse. Nobody had the heart to kill the innocent Betsy Braddock until Colossus decided to take matters into his own hands and crushed Proteus and Braddock under a car. All this took a toll on the X-Men, but it was especially harsh on Charles and his family because he lost a son he couldn't raise properly. Charles also managed to rescue and subdue Magneto by blocking off his memories of the past and rehabilitating him. But now, after what happened in Berlin, Charles is questioning his actions and the decision to subdue Magneto. What if Erik was right? What if Charles is just standing in the way of nature, being an obstacle to the progress of evolution? Right now, it's early morning in New York City, but the X-Men are busy fighting Magneto's acolytes in New Zealand. We then see the stark contrast in the life of Charles Xavier when compared to his X-Men. While his students fight for their lives, Charles sleeps cozily in his bed, and as the Blackbird soars into view in New Zealand, Charles takes a steaming hot shower in his bathroom. Storm recovers from killing another fellow mutant while being charged by one of the acolytes, only to be saved by Piotr in the nick of time. Charles, meanwhile, shaves his beard, completely unimpressed by the luxuries of life that he is currently enjoying. We then see Wolverine slice off gun after gun as Charles puts on his clothes for the day in a luxurious walk-in closet filled to the brim with expensive garments. Wolverine then rushes towards an acolyte armed with explosives in New Zealand while Charles peacefully pens down a letter in his study. Wolverine slices off the hand and gun of the man carrying explosives when we see what Charles was writing. It's a letter addressed to Scott, and it has instructions that Scott should only open the letter past midnight today. We then see Xavier make his way through the city while trying to blend in as he reads the letter to us. My dear Scott, by the time you return from New Zealand, I will have packed my things and gone. I apologize for not saying this to your face, but you know how we telepaths are with verbal confrontation. Charles goes on to explain to Scott that he feels like a failure. He thinks of himself as a failed husband, a failed father, and most of all, a failed teacher. Charles now realizes after the recent events that all his lectures, books, and conventions calling for harmony between humans and mutants were wrong. He has begun to rethink his choices, and he now understands that only one species can sit on top of the food chain, because that is the natural order of things, and even he can't go against that. Charles hates himself right now, and for once feels glad that his lecture in New York was cancelled, in light of what his son David did in Berlin. He also can't imagine how he would have given the lecture anyway, with Iceman still fighting for his life in the hospital. I'm glad new terror groups are beginning to form, because what right did I have? What right did I have to subvert the ideals of the Brotherhood of Mutants? Charles then goes on to confess to Scott that his best regret in all of this is the recent psychic rehabilitation of Magneto. We then see Charles sitting in Central Park looking over Erik, who is now a teacher for children with special needs. Erik carries a little girl on his shoulders as Charles goes over the rest of his letter. Charles feels like a cheat for having taken Erik's memories away in the hope that someday Erik will come around and see things his way. He then tells Scott that he is going to remove the mental blocks he created in Erik's mind this afternoon, and by the time Scott is reading this letter, the job will already be done. It is clear to me now that Magneto must be freed, and nature should now be allowed to take her own course. We now head back to the X-Mansion, where the X-Men are back from their recent mission in New Zealand. Wolverine and Colossus have a bath and discuss how the Acolytes are among the numerous groups that have now broken off from the Brotherhood, and have started following their own path. Magneto's disappearance is part of the reason for this, but Pietro's recent decision to enter discussions with the UN regarding peace talks have a major part to play as well. In a moment of fleeting brotherhood among the X-Men, Colossus confesses that Wolverine is back, and Wolverine smiles and returns the favor. Good to have you back as well, you big ugly freak. Back in Central Park, we see Erik approach Charles as a school teacher for children with special needs, totally unaware of the history he shares with the professor. Erik confesses that he recognizes Charles from his lectures and books, and then goes on to ask Charles why he comes to the park so regularly. Charles shares that coming to the park helps him clear his head, and then he goes on to say that he and Erik are more alike than the world perceives them to be. They both take care of children with special needs, and the only difference is that his students sometimes use what they have learned to save the world. Erik then goes on to formally introduce himself and asks Charles what's he doing here right now. Shouldn't he be with the X-Men, or at least in touch with them because they're fighting a battle somewhere in New Zealand? Oh yes, I should be, but this is their last mission under my jurisdiction. Mr. Lencher, as of midnight tonight, I'm closing the school. Are you serious? Unfortunately, yes. Erik implores Charles to expand on his thoughts, and the professor confesses that he blames himself for the recent actions of his son David. How that if he had been a better father, maybe this situation would have never arisen in the first place. Maybe if he was a good father to David, maybe Colossus would have been spared the guilt of committing a murder. What do you mean, Professor Xavier? Are you disappointed in Colossus because he resorted to murder? No, not at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. I'm starting to think he might have been right. Back in the danger room, we see Storm try to come close to Beast by offering to take him to dinner, but Beast is being cryptically distant for some reason. He says that he has already eaten, and then in a desperate attempt, Ororo tries to invite him to the movies. But when Beast continues being cold to her, she confronts him. She knows he's being distant because of what she said about the professor, that he could be using his telepathic abilities to play with the minds of all the X-Men. I wish I had never never brought it up, Hank. But it all makes such perfect sense, Ororo. How else could someone that looks like you be attracted to someone that looks like me? Because, damn it, I love you, Henry. But Hank is too consumed by this proposition to believe Ororo's words. He wants to be perfectly sure because he lets things between them progress further. I love you too much to make you kiss this face unless there's empirical evidence that we're talking about the real thing here. Back in Central Park, we see the conversation between Erik and Charles progress further. Erik has now taken a defensive stand while Charles expresses how he feels about Magneto's ideals, how he has come to now realize that every stage in evolution is marked by bloodshed, and maybe this time, this evolution of Homo superiors will be marked by the blood of Homo sapiens. Charles is confused, but lately he has been wondering that Magneto might have been right. Maybe he's just a romantic idealist trying to hold on to the past. But this is when Erik takes a stand. He says that he read online that Magneto's strategies and tactics were too close to the traditional human mindset. He would use imperialistic tactics to get his opponents to submit, something that doesn't scream the next stage of evolution at all. He then goes on to show Charles how his ideals have changed the world, how even the Brotherhood of Mutants, now led by Quicksilver, agrees with his morals, how they are now in talks of a compromise with the UN. I think you're rather overestimating my importance, Mr. Lensher. Charles confesses that his public image is just a facade. And inside? Inside, Charles is just another emotionally distant, broken man. He couldn't even cry at his son's funeral, and when he was holding his crying ex-wife for comfort, all he could think about were the mascara stains she would leave on his shirt. David's death was proof that Charles is a failure. How can he be trusted with the next generation when he can't even take care of his own son? It's then that Erik decides to fully open up. He pulls out his wallet and then gets the 2 tickets for Charles's canceled lecture in Madison Square Garden. He shows them to Charles and tells him that there are a lot of people out there that believe in him, and Erik, is one of them. He is still holding on to the tickets in the hope that the lecture might be rescheduled someday. Charles is more than surprised. The sudden surge of emotion that he feels brings all of his bottled up feelings to the surface. He begins to sob and cry uncontrollably as Erik puts his arm around Charles's shoulder reassuringly. On the other side of town, it is now night and we are in the St. Charles Hospital. Jean and Scott are visiting Iceman, who is surrounded by numerous police officers due to the recent rise in anti-mutant sentiment. Jean is using her powers to shield the two of them as they discuss how things have changed, and how Bobby shouldn't have been on that mission because he is barely 20 years old. Jean can read Scott's mind and she knows that Cyclops is in love with her. She gets him to put his arm around her by claiming to be cold, and then confesses to him that she can read his mind and tell that he loves her. The two then kiss for the first time, and we see Scott and Jean's relationship begin to blossom into something special. Back in the X-Mansion, Charles has given much thought to his recent decisions, and after his talk with Erik, Charles has decided to go back on his promise of leaving the X-Men. He instead uses his telepathic abilities to send out an important message to his students. Class resumes at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning by X-Men. Ultimate X-Men number 21, The Orientation. Kitty Pryde says goodbye to her friends while they remind her to stick to the plan. David Fisher's parents are visiting their hometown, which is why there is a huge party at his place today. Kitty and her friends have planned to use the sleepover at Shelley's house as an excuse to attend the party. But when she gets inside and faces her mom, she realizes that the entire plan has gone down the drain. Not only does her mom know that Kitty plans to sneak to the party under the cover of the sleepover, but she has also called Shelley's mom and informed her about the same. Neither is Kitty going to the party anymore, and nor is Shelley. In fact, Shelley's parents have grounded her for a month. Oh great, that's just fabulous. It's not enough that I'm the only girl in school missing this party, now you have to go and ruin it for my friends too? Thanks a lot, Mom. Nice job. Kitty then storms off and heats her dinner in the microwave, only to realize that her powers have started kicking in again, all against her will. First, the plate with spaghetti and meatballs phases through her hands, and the next thing you know, Kitty is phasing through the floor. She scares the hell out of Mrs. Winterbottom on the floor below, who is busy cheating on her husband. Kitty sheepishly apologizes and starts backing away, promising to keep everything hidden from Mr. Winterbottom, when she suddenly phases through the wall and is on the street outside. She then phases through a speeding cab, which is then followed by a speeding bus. She tries desperately to call out for help, for anyone to hold her hand to stop her from phasing, but everyone simply calls her a freak and keeps their distance. The next thing you know, Kitty is phasing through the street and is in the sewers below. Before things can get any more dire, she frantically calls her mom. Mom, it's happened again. I'm in a sewer under Burns and Yellowstone. Could you please pick me up? A few hours have passed and we now catch up with Mrs. Pryde and Kitty at night. Kitty is asleep on the couch beside her mother, who is busy reading an email on her computer. The email is from Charles Xavier, and he has agreed to take in Kitty as a student to help her get control over her powers. The next day, Jean drives Mrs. Pride and Kitty to the Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters, while they are given an unofficial flyby by Cyclops, who has become much more relaxed and laid back since he started dating Jean. As they approach the X-Mansion, Jean tells them about the 3D hologram they use to keep the school hidden. It is one of the 8 main security features that helps keep them safe and secure. Once they arrive at the mansion, Mrs. Pride is greeted by Professor Xavier. He then goes on to telepathically communicate with Kitty and tells her that her suspicions are right. She is indeed a mutant, but he can help her control her powers if she decides to stay. He then asks Jean to give Kitty a tour of the X-Mansion while he has a private chat with Mrs. Pride in his office. As Jean and Kitty walk through the mansion, Jean tells Kitty how she was found by the professor in the mental ward of a hospital. The professor helped Jean to get a grip on her hormones and extrasensory perceptions, which allowed her to regain control of their lives. She then peeks out of the window and shows her Storm and Cyclops dressed in orange outfits. The two of them are back from a covert mission, and she goes on to tell Kitty that the professor has helped everyone in this mansion. Scott was the first X-Men he rescued, and the professor helped develop the ruby quartz visor that helps Cyclops look around without blasting everything in sight. He even helped Storm control her weather powers, who used to blast everything around her with lightning bolts every time she sneezed. Kitty is enamored by all the equipment and training grounds she can see out of the window. Jean smirks and tells Kitty that they get to learn everything here. They learn how to fly, drive, jet ski, and even how to deactivate nuclear bombs. The two of them then turn around to spot Wolverine and Colossus entering the mansion. Colossus is carrying an unconscious Wolverine on his back as Jean tells Kitty that the two of them were helping the NYPD bust a drug-dealing operation on the streets that was selling a drug derived from the cranial fluid of a dead telepath. Kitty learns about the danger room and Wolverine's healing factor. As they continue walking through the mansion, Kitty hears voices coming from a nearby room. It's Hank's room, and although he usually loves to meet new joinees, he hasn't been very sociable lately. Jean tells Kitty that Hank's recent breakup with Aurora, combined with Iceman's injuries, has put him on the edge. We then see Beast hanging from a ceiling as he watches the evening news. A rough-spoken and crude politician, Senator Turk, is on the screen screaming and requesting an end to all mutants. He tells the world that Iceman has been through 12 operations in the past few weeks and will have pins inserted into his legs where once used to be healthy bones. We learn that Bobby's parents are suing Charles Xavier and the X-Men for $50 million, and Senator Turk on TV is using this to propagate anti-mutant hate across the country. We then see Kitty and Jean continue their tour throughout the mansion, and Jean tells her their facility is funded by unknown billionaires that keep their distance. Meanwhile, in the danger room, Scott is helping Colossus and Wolverine brush up on their skills, while the two of them talk about how Wolverine hates Scott and might be using these training exercises to get back at him. Colossus tells Wolverine to let it go. He had his chance with Jean, and he should now let Scott have his chance. Back in Charles Xavier's study, he is discussing the admission of Kitty Pryde with her mother. Mrs. Pryde is on board, but she has only one condition. She doesn't want Kitty to be involved in any of the world-saving missions all of his students seem to rush to. Charles sighs, and after much debating, reluctantly agrees to Mrs. Pryde's demands. "Of course, I must respect your wishes, but I think you're making a terrible mistake here, Mrs. Pryde." We then see Kitty fall to the ground with a loud thud on the next page, and it is soon revealed that she involuntarily phased out of the car they were leaving in. This time, Colossus is going to drop Kitty Pryde and her mom, and Jean reveals that she chose Piotr because she could read Kitty's mind and knew that she found Colossus hot. They all wish the Pryde family goodbye, and Jean tells the professor that Kitty is more excited about their co-curricular activities and training rather than the classes. As she converses with the professor telepathically, something goes terribly wrong. Everything around Jean turns into bland nothingness, and soon the expression of sheer horror is splattered all over her face. She knows what is happening, and she has no power to stop this. Her nightmarish visions are back, and we then see Jean get consumed by gargantuan flames as she screams out loud for the professor. In reality, Jean is experiencing all of this in her head. She is having some sort of seizure, and while the X-Men try to prevent her from biting down her tongue, the professor uses his powers to adjust her acetylcholine and dopamine levels. While on the ground, Jean is a crying and seizuring mess until the professor's adjustments take effect. Once they do, a slowly recovering Jean screams, "The visions are back! The mind blocks, they aren't working anymore, Professor!" Ultimate X-Men number 22, Genie's Choice. In the southern Asian subcontinent country of Pakistan, an animal evolutionary mutant named Sumatran is tearing through the security systems of a nuclear facility. He is a large humanoid rhino with tough skin and an even tougher skull. Sumatran speeds through the entire building while ripping through any security establishment that stands in his way. But he is going too fast, and before he can control his speed, he crashes through the base's outer perimeter and into the mountain nearby. Wind flashes near him, and we then see Pietro towering over Sumatran as he lies on the ground. Great! 10 seconds into the mission and our biggest hitter just fractured his skull. Other animal evolutionaries accompanying Pietro on this mission tell him to stop worrying and focus on the mission. Despite Sumatran's current condition, he managed to take down all the security defenses of the base, and they can now proceed with their next phase of the mission. Quicksilver has quite a team at his disposal. There's Orbweaver, a human arachnid, Procimian, a humanoid gorilla, and of course his powerful sister, Wanda, aka the Scarlet Witch. Quicksilver checks in on everyone and then asks Wanda to proceed with the plan without worrying about the backup units arriving from the southwest border. We then see Quicksilver disarm the backup units and then tie them up using ropes before even a second has passed. He then leaps into the nuclear facility before it is locked down and expertly makes his way through the web of lasers as though he has done this a million times. He then opens a chute and lets in their latest joinee of the Brotherhood of Mutants, HHVX, a self-replicating sentient mutant virus that is very harmful to Homo sapiens. We then see Wanda fly high into the air and then steal every nuclear missile from Pakistan's nuclear arsenal. The President of the United States is watching every bit of this unfold from his control room. Quicksilver, who is now outside along Procimian, hopes that Toad and Sabretooth are watching this. They called Pietro a disgrace after Magneto's death and left the Brotherhood, but now that the Brotherhood has managed to neuter 2 countries off of their nuclear weapons, Pietro can't wait to see the look on their faces. We then cut to the base of the Brotherhood, where Pietro is busy recording a message for the entire world. Blob is helping him record while Wanda, Procimian, Orbweaver, and the rest of them watch with growing anticipation. As Quicksilver records this message, we learn that the Brotherhood has stripped both Pakistan and India off of their nuclear weapons because both countries have displayed a terrifying irresponsibility with such power. Quicksilver then trips over one of his lines because the auto-cue is too slow, and Procimian storms out of the room mumbling to himself, "Idiots! We're being led by idiots!" Once out, Procimian remembers the time they were led by Magneto, how Magneto never even had to record his lines or even use auto-cue. He is now in the recreational area where other animal evolutionaries are busy passing their time. Some play pool while others play video games. He then goes over to a miniature house and begins talking to Kathleen, a microscopic animal evolutionary that resembles a centipede. She agrees with Procimian while telling him that she can't believe they all have stuck to their word and have upheld the ceasefire they agreed upon with the UN. Who cares if bombs are unpopular in the current climate? We're terrorists, for God's sake. Doesn't that mean we're obliged to blow up people from time to time? Procimian takes a seat by her miniature house and expresses his own dissent towards the latest direction the Brotherhood has picked. He feels that Pietro and Wanda are too enamored by the media attention they have been getting lately, which is why they have forgotten their roots. Another animal evolutionary named Saluki then chimes in and says that they should stay loyal to the people that broke them out of their prison in the first place. Yeah, but for what, Saluki? Anti-globalization missions? Vandalizing burger chains? It's clear that dissent among the Brotherhood is growing rapidly, and the animal evolutionaries are only standing with Wanda and Pietro till they find something better. They outnumber mutants in their ranks 3-1. Kathleen, who is busy lounging in her miniature house, points out how only 6 of the original guards assembled by Magneto remain in the Brotherhood. Toad and Sabretooth have left, which leaves only people like Blob among the high-ranking personnel in the Brotherhood. What kind of leadership puts up with a 50-ton sweat bucket who spends all day surfing the internet pretending he's a bulimic supermodel? A temporary one, Kathleen. A very temporary one. We now move to the Xavier Institute for Gifted Children in New York City, where Jean and the professor are discussing her recent hallucinations about the Phoenix. Jean has been putting herself through numerous examinations constantly, and the professor is reassuring her that everything is normal. Her vital signs, physical health are all in peak condition, while her mind is naturally stressed due to this recent ordeal. He implores Jean to stop worrying about herself and instead focus on her teammates. Not only does she have a decent boyfriend after all this while, but she also needs to focus on Beast, who has been severely depressed since Aurora and Hank broke up. He also implores her to stay in touch with Wolverine more. Wolverine is the most dangerous mutant in the world, Jean. Playing games with him is most unwise. We now head to the map room in the X-Mansion where Cyclops is busy poring over the map of the Savage Land when suddenly Kitty phases into the room. She wants his opinions on the name Shadowcat, and Cyclops simply asks her to focus on her physics exam that is in a few days. Kitty wants to nail down a superhero name, but Cyclops tells her that she can't accompany them on any missions because her mother specifically requested this from the professor. You scared I'll do an Iceman and sue you if you break me? Kitty then apologizes for her rude remark, but is quickly interrupted by Wolverine, who is drunk and here to pick a fight with Cyclops for dating Jean. Wolverine keeps pushing his luck and finally breaks Scott when he says, "She sure enjoyed the little taste she had back in Washington, Cyclops. I think we both know it's only a matter of time before she comes back for the main course." In an instant, Cyclops spins around and punches Logan directly in the face. He draws blood and Logan is sent sprawling to the ground. Kitty watches in horror as Cyclops screams at her to go get the professor. Things are about to get out of hand. Kitty phases out of the room and we see Cyclops cry out in pain because Logan gets him with a low blow. Logan then tells Cyclops that he isn't using his claws for the sake of Jean and then proceeds to beat Scott to a pulp. Scott has had enough. His face is bruised and battered and Wolverine is talking a lot of smack. He decides to use his powers and sends Logan flying away thanks to his optic blast. He then approaches the hole his optic blast created in the wall and begins talking smack at Wolverine. But when he gets no response, Scott peers inside only to be greeted by what he was fearing: the light shining off of Wolverine's claws. A raging Wolverine leaps at Scott, ready to tear him to pieces, but is soon stopped mid-air and put into a mental prison by the professor. It's all over. The professor walks in and says, "What on earth do you think you're doing, Scott?" "Only trying to defend myself, sir." "By throwing the first punch in a fight?" The professor is highly disappointed due to Scott's behavior and goes on to put him and Logan in cerebral detention for the night. He has slowed down time to an eighth, which should give the two of them plenty of time to think about what they've done. The professor has just finished and is taking a sigh of relief only to be interrupted by Kitty Pryde, who is on the floor looking over Jean. Jean is on the ground all curled up and seems to be having another seizure, but when the professor walks over he can look inside Jean's mind and gets to know that hundreds of dwarf-sized imps seem to be haunting her. Ultimate X-Men number 23, Catfishing. We begin this issue with Beast acting nonchalant when Kitty Pryde phases in through the wall to call him for their daily exercises in the Danger Room. Beast says that he will follow her in a minute, he just needs to finish his critique of Karl Marx's Das Kapital. But once she is gone, we see that Beast has been busy chatting with someone named Naomi. The two are mailing each other constantly, and it turns out that Naomi is a supermodel with a PhD in infrared astronomy that has been away for 48 hours because of her work. Hank wants to meet Naomi in person, but she doesn't want to spoil what they have by rushing things. Sadly, we then switch to the headquarters of the Brotherhood and soon learn that Blob has been pretending to be Naomi all this while. He's catfished Hank to help reveal every secret of the X-Men. He is joined by Procimian, who can't believe how low the Brotherhood has had to stoop. First, he had to attack third world countries alongside Quicksilver, and now he is having to look for account irregularities in multinational corporations so that the Brotherhood can blackmail them. All of this while, Blob catfishes one of the greatest scientific minds on Earth. On the other side of town, we catch up with Scott and Jean cuddling together on a bench while watching the sunset. Jean's nightmares have worsened and she has had 3 more psychic attacks in the past 12 hours. Scott tries to comfort her and reminds her that this time it isn't as bad as when the professor and Scott had first found her in the psychiatric ward. Jean sighs and goes on to confess to Scott that she fears things might be worse this time, because although she has been keeping herself composed, she knows something is trying to come into this world through her. And unlike before, pills or the professor's psychic barriers can't seem to hold it back this time. Scott asks her to elaborate on this feeling, and Jean tells him, "It feels like I've been selected as a host for some ultra-dimensional entity that wants access to this reality so that it can annihilate us, like it did to a billion worlds before us. It talks to me in Latin and calls itself the Phoenix Force. It wants to desecrate and unravel everything in our universe." Scott is at a loss for words, and Jean tries to change the subject by asking him how much more time they have have before he reaches the Savage Land. It turns out that Scott is in a jet with Wolverine traveling to the Savage Land while Jean is in her bed at the mansion. Jean has linked the two of them psychically so that they can share some time together. Before the two of them break the link, Jean tells Scott that no matter what happens in the future, the past few months that she has been with him have been the best of her life, and that she will always love him. The two share a tender moment before the link is broken and Scott and Wolverine touch ground on the Savage Land. Meanwhile, we catch up with Hank, who is still busy chatting with Naomi and has been revealing everything about the mansion and his life to her. He tells Naomi, who is really Blob, about the recent fight between Cyclops and Wolverine. He also reveals that as a punishment, the professor has sent both the X-Men to Savage Land to recover a team of US Marines that simply vanished into thin air. Blob, meanwhile, is sitting at a diner guzzling down burger after burger as he pretends to be Naomi perfectly. He paints Naomi as a mutant sympathizer that hates humans in an attempt to change Hank's view about them. But Hank, however, still believes in the professor's philosophy and goes on to reveal to Blob that they were visited by a representative of their secret sponsors to gather details about how much money the X-Men will need in the legal battle against Bobby's parents. Naomi and Beast continue talking, and we learn that though many of the X-Men think that the professor is using his powers to manipulate their sponsors, Beast feels otherwise. He knows their sponsors are heavily invested in their cause and reveals that they are none other than the Hellfire Club. On the other side of the city in Long Island, we see Senator Turk leaving Bobby's place while being hounded by reporters. He tells the reporters that they have revised the amount for the case to $100 million, and Bobby will be making a public statement the very next day. The senator then leaves, and we head inside the home to find Bobby sulking in a chair. He doesn't want to give any scathing statements against the professor or the X-Men, but his parents are in a tough spot. Firstly, because Senator Turk sponsored Bobby's treatment, and secondly, because they aren't in a good place financially. His dad says, "Bobby, please, could we get a little less hysterical here? Could we maybe try to have a conversation again instead of listening to Xavier's lunatic rhetoric?" His dad then reveals to Bobby that once the news was out that his son is a mutant, he was fired from the car plant. And when this news spread, all of his mother's friends stopped talking to her. Their house gets vandalized each day, and filth gets shoved into their letterbox regularly. They are hated by their community, and this lawsuit is the first piece of good luck their family has seen in the past few years. The money from this lawsuit could mean a fresh start for their family, and the money they are requesting is nothing for the billionaires that sponsor Professor Xavier. And although his parents come from a good place, he can't help but notice the mutant-hating undertone in their words. They refer to his mutant powers as a condition, and they use words like "these people" and "not normal" when referring to the X-Men. Meanwhile, back in the X-Mansion, Beast is busy chatting with Naomi again. He sits in a tree with his laptop while he tells Naomi, aka Blob, about his day, how he has been feeling disconnected from everyone in the X-Mansion, and how he feels lonelier than usual. Blob tries to sow doubt in his mind again by telling him that he might have joined the wrong side in this battle, but Hank is quick to come around. Blob then tries to double down by calling Xavier a hypocrite who calls for peace but gets Magneto murdered in front of thousands of witnesses, and that is when Hank reveals to Naomi that Magneto isn't exactly dead. This landslide news comes crashing down on Blob, who sits there speechless in his dark room as the realization dawns on him. We now head to the Savage Land to catch up with Wolverine and Cyclops. Wolverine is using his skills to track down the Marines and has already realized that everyone is dead. He can tell that the entire troop was taken down before either of them could fire their weapons. Whatever or whoever killed the Marines then dragged their bodies north of their current location. Wolverine begins tracking the scent of the Marines, with Scott following him while trying to make small talk. Wolverine tries to keep up his good demeanor but then breaks character when he can't take it anymore. "Summers, would you do me a favor? Would you stop trying to find something we got in common? Cause I ain't ever gonna like you, bub." Cyclops is about to say something scathing, but he is quickly shushed by Wolverine. Logan can smell something around them, and he asks Cyclops to stay quiet and silent. Soon they hear loud thumping, and seconds later the trees part and give way to a Tyrannosaurus Rex that is running directly towards them. Logan and Scott manage to get out of its way in the nick of time while the rampaging dinosaur runs away without even having spotted the tiny humans at his feet. Feeling that the danger is past, the two of them relax a bit, only to be startled by a loud scream behind them. When they turn around, they find a horrified Kitty Pryde standing there scared because of a a ginormous spider. Kitty Pryde tries to weasel her way out of trouble by acting innocent and cute, but Scott isn't having any of it. Her mother specifically requested that Kitty be kept away from life-endangering missions, and Scott is going to see that promise through. He orders Kitty to go back to the jet and watch some DVDs until Logan and him get back from their mission. Kitty tries to act tough, but when Wolverine chimes in, all bravado is drained from her face. Kitty sheepishly starts walking back towards the jet while yelling, "Okay, but I want you to know, I think you're treating me like a child and I'm really not happy about this." With Kitty taken care of, Wolverine and Scott continue with their mission. Back in New York, Beast still sits in the tree while talking to Naomi, and by now Blob has the entire Brotherhood peeking from behind him to read every message sent by Hank. Blob, pretending to be Naomi, acts naive and calls Hank insane because he is talking rubbish. It is then that Hank reveals the secret every member of the Brotherhood is dying to know. Magneto dying was a mass hallucination created by the Professor. The Professor, instead of killing Magneto, simply brainwashed him instead and gave him a new identity. Magneto now lives with a woman in the Bronx and plays chess with Charles every Thursday afternoon. What seems like a simple, unassuming message to Beast drops like a bomb at the headquarters of the Brotherhood. Blob is panicking like crazy because he doesn't know what to do next, but Procimian does. He tells Blob to arrange a meeting with Hank, and Blob types in the required message. Hank has been dying to meet Naomi anyway, so it doesn't take long for him to agree to a meeting. B-E-A beautiful, says Procimian as he begins hatching a new plan for meeting Beast in person. Ultimate X-Men number 24, Kitty's Unexpected Rescue. Wolverine and Cyclops rappel down into Magneto's base while following the scent of the lost Marines. Cyclops is again trying to make small talk with Wolverine, but Logan is being awfully cold, like usual. They then start talking about Jean, and Scott says how she should be allowed to choose her boyfriend independently. Logan isn't liking this talk, which is why he shuts Cyclops up by telling him that they are closing in on the scent of the Marines. Meanwhile, on the outside, Kitty Pryde is sitting on top of the jet while talking to Charles Xavier on the phone, who isn't happy one bit. He reprimands Kitty for sneaking away and tells her that she needs to pack her bags as soon as she gets back. Kitty can't believe it. Scott betrays the X-Men, joins the Brotherhood, and yet the Professor welcomes him back with open arms? Wolverine kills 1,000 people before joining the X-Men, yet all he gets is a written warning? And Kitty? 1 foot out of line and she is expelled? Kitty can't believe it, but the Professor goes on to tell her that she betrayed her mother's only request, which is the reason she is getting expelled. Look, Kitty, we're waiting to watch Bobby Drake's formal declaration against us on TV right now. I don't want to be sitting here in 6 months' time watching you and your mother making the exact same speech. Kitty tries to get the Professor to relax, but she is breaking up. Before the connection is lost, the Professor asks her if she wants Piotr to come get her or not. But Kitty, being the teenager she is, simply jokes that she can phase through objects and is currently sitting on top of a billion-dollar warplane. She won't be getting mugged anytime soon. The Professor scoffs, "Teenagers." And we then see Jean walk in. She's been feeling much better lately and didn't even get any nightmares or hellish visions last night. She sits down beside the Professor as all of them get ready to watch Bobby make his speech. We then see Storm try to invite Beast down to watch Bobby's speech, but Hank is too occupied with his clothing. He tells Storm that he is meeting a friend for dinner at a fancy Japanese place, but can't decide what he should be wearing. Meanwhile, Procimian has the entire Brotherhood gathered around him as he goes over their plans. They're going to ambush Hank once he gets to the designated place, but he wants everyone to stay hush about this operation. He doesn't want anyone outside their group to know about this, especially Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. Now, outside the trial court in New York, every news channel is getting ready to capture and broadcast Bobby's statement. The slimy Senator Turk is convincing Bobby to give a scathing statement against Charles Xavier and the school by dangling the future of his parents in front of him. He also slides in a remark about helping pay for Bobby's treatment, adding another layer of pressure on the 15-year-old. Once the two of them are ready, Senator Turk puts on a jolly face and addresses the crowd and viewers at home. He goes on to highlight Bobby's injuries and calls Charles Xavier an irresponsible cult leader. He then goes on to tell the crowd how Bobby was bullied and neglected at the Xavier School for Gifted Children, and then urges Bobby to make his statement. Bobby keeps looking at his feet, and for a minute it seems like he is choking and might not speak at all. In an attempt to help him, Senator Turk hands him a copy copy of the framed speech Bobby is supposed to give. But that is what breaks Bobby. He tears the paper in half and tells the crowd that he isn't going to read the pre-planned speech Senator Turk's PR team orchestrated for him. He is going to tell the truth, and the truth is that it was his choice to go on the mission. Bobby proclaims that Professor Xavier is teaching the X-Men to be superheroes for God's sake, and broken bones are part of the passage. I know my mom and dad could really use that money right now, and I feel really bad for screwing up their lives, but I'm not gonna bleed some guy just because he's rich and help some stupid senator close down a school teaching ideas that scare him. I got too much integrity for that, and I learned that lesson at Xavier's. Silence envelops the crowd as Bobby gets off the stage and begins walking away with his parents. His parents are too flabbergasted to say anything, and the only one screaming right now is Senator Turk. He calls Bobby names, says that he just made the worst decision of his life, and goes on to emphasize the enormous amounts of money he poured into his treatment. He continues his incessant screaming until Bobby interrupts him. Sorry for interrupting, Senator, but do you hear that? Do you hear that crackling sound? Kinda like ice cubes melting in a fizzy soda? That's whatever's in your pants hitting -20, cowboy. We now catch up with Wolverine and Cyclops at Magneto's base in the Savage Land. They have hit a dead end, but Wolverine can smell the stench of moldy flesh coming from the other side of the shutter doors in front of them. Cyclops and Wolverine get ready to take down the door in front of them, but they are soon ambushed by the Marines that they came here to track. The only problem is that the Marines are dead, and these are reanimated zombies. Cyclops begins fighting the zombies, but huge numbers overpower him easily. Only Wolverine can get through them using his rage, and he begins slicing limbs with each passing second. Within minutes, Wolverine has taken care of each zombie in their vicinity, but the sheer exhaustion from this ordeal has left him drained. Cyclops tries to help Wolverine, but that is when the shutter doors in front of them open, and they see a huge army of undead zombies waiting to greet them, this time armed with guns. A booming voice then echoes throughout the entire facility. To be honest, those units were only being used to restrain you, gentlemen. This batch with the guns, however, will be quite willing to kill you if that should prove necessary. The voice talks as though it knows Wolverine and Cyclops, and Scott is forced to ask, have we met? The voice then mysteriously goes on to tell them that it knows everything about them. The two men walk deeper into the facility and are greeted by a huge humanoid machine that seems to be linked to the entire facility. It is Magneto's computer that controlled the entire facility, and over time, since the Sentinels leveled this place, it has gained sentience. Not only has it gained sentience, it also has evolved into a new species, just like Homo superiors. At first, it wasn't able to carry out all its plans due to the lack of manual dexterity, but the computer soon overcame this problem by reanimating the dead and ordering them to rebuild it instead. But even the dead he found in the facility weren't enough. It needed much more, which is why it stole the Marines from the surface. The computer then goes on to reveal what it is planning. It plans to create an entirely new species of post-humans that will be self-sustaining and have skin made from hardened alloys. They won't need food, water, or shelter for that matter. It doesn't take long for Cyclops and Wolverine to realize that this is just an elaborate way for the computer to say that it is going to wipe out all life on Earth. The computer disagrees and tells the two of them that it plans to assimilate all life on Earth until they have no use. It's so good to talk to you gentlemen again. I could smell you, feel your footsteps the moment you stepped inside the facility. And yet I chose to not kill you until I could boast about how far I've come since we last met. Does this mean pride is a result of my? Does this mean pride is a result of my? Does this mean pride is a result of my? The computer starts glitching, and the next thing you know, it explodes with a loud bang. Kitty Pryde then peeks out of the floor below them. Hey guys, I just came down to tell you that a dinosaur was sniffing around the place, but I think my powers are doing something to the electronics in here. Both Wolverine and Cyclops order Kitty to get out of there in unison, and any protests Kitty had waiting for them are thrown out of the window when she watches the army of zombies in front of her, as well as Wolverine slicing through them like butter. Back in New York, we finally meet the Hellfire Club, the mysterious benefactors of Charles Xavier. It's a group of people sitting around a table while their leader, Brother Sebastian, sips on wine. Brother Sebastian is awfully focused on Jean and wants to know if she has experienced any visions of the Phoenix in the last 24 hours. One of his assistants informs him that she has been without an incident, and this makes Sebastian smile. Excellent. This means her body is becoming accustomed to the idea of serving as a host. And once he says this, we learn that there is a reason the Hellfire Club has been in funding all of Xavier's operation. They want Jean to act as a host for the Phoenix Force. Astronomy has been on the phone and has made it clear that the alignment is just 48 hours away. After all this time, all these thousands of years, and we only have to wait a couple more days, I believe it's time the X-Men met the Hellfire Club. Ultimate X-Men number 25. He's back! The X-Men, along with the Professor, arrive at the Hellfire Club mansion. They've been forced to dress impeccably in flashy outfits by the Professor, because this is the first time they are meeting their sponsors. Storm feels out of place while Piotr can't wait to get his photos taken by the paparazzi. Sadly, when they arrive, there are no photographers outside, but the Professor reassures Piotr that there's bound to be media representatives inside, because nobody in the world is going to miss the opportunity to cover the Hellfire Club revealing itself to be the X-Men's benefactors. Charles then uses his telepathic powers to lift himself up the stairs, and they are welcomed with a huge round of applause by all the attendees. Once they arrive, Storm checks on Jean to make sure she's doing okay, and each one of them fails to notice the large phoenix painted on the floor in the middle of the mansion. Over the next hour or so, the X-Men spend time meeting celebrities, politicians, and presidents from around the world. Piotr meets the Russian president while Storm fawns over Arnold Schwarzenegger. While the X-Men mingle with the crowd, Charles finally gets to meet the head of the Hellfire Club, Sebastian Shaw. The two make small talk, and then Charles asks why the Hellfire Club has finally decided to make their collaboration public. Shaw tells Charles that Homo superiors are the next step in human evolution, and time has finally come to take a stand and pick sides. While Charles enjoys a glass of champagne, we see two men from the Hellfire Club discuss how obvious Charles and the X-Men are to their real plans. They also discuss the Stephen Hawking article that Charles has been passing on to anyone he meets at the party, and how pathetic it is. The article by the famed scientist was published in the London Times, and it talks about how Homo superiors are humanity's last hope in the fight against the evolution of artificial intelligence. Sebastian Shaw then proceeds to make a toast and proclaims to the public that Hellfire Club totally supports Charles's ideas and has sponsored everything for the X-Men. He then tells Charles that he has prepared a little surprise for him, and when Shaw gives the signal, 3 men burst into the room and blast Piotr with an energy weapon. When Storm tries to rush to his aid, she too is taken down. And now that only Charles remains, Shaw towers over him and claims that this has all been a ploy so that the Fire Club could get to Jean. Jean seems to be in a trance because she is refusing to help her fellow X-Men as well as the Professor. The Professor screams for Jean, but before he can use his powers, one of Shaw's men hits him square in the chest with the energy weapon. Okay, I want the 3 of them restrained and taken to the temple. Don't put them in the pentagram, of course. The pentagram's just for the inner circle. Shaw then walks out of the room with Jean while his men struggle to transport the 3 incapacitated X-Men, especially Piotr because he has turned into Colossus. On the next page, we enter the Hellfire Club's secret room. There is a huge pentagram in the middle of it with a smaller circle to the north and a huge phoenix symbol in the south. On the periphery of the circle are pagan symbols carved into the ground where the rest of the members of the Hellfire Club stand still. Over the course of the next few panels, we see Sean and Charles argue about who Jean actually is. Jean stands there still as a rock in a green hood while the two argue. Shaw tries to tell Charles that Jean is now possessed by their revered Phoenix God, a 20-billion-year-old entity with the power of creation and destruction in its palms. Jean's motor functions are already being controlled by the Phoenix God, but Charles refuses to believe Shaw. He instead laughs in his face and says, "Has it ever occurred to you that these Phoenix visions Jean is experiencing are just a side effect of her fragile psychosis? She is an 18-year-old telepath trying to get a grip on her gifts, you idiot. These kinds of delusions are absolutely standard." Shaw scoffs because Charles is someone who doesn't believe him until he has proof, and so Shaw decides to give proof to Charles Xavier. He tells Charles that the Hellfire Club has worshipped the Phoenix Force for 1,000 years. Prominent figures from America's past have been part of the club, and all the sacred geometry and the architecture of their country refers to the Phoenix God. This isn't an eagle weaved into the fabric of the carpet on the Oval Office floor, you fool. What you pay homage to when you address a president is a fine, full-feathered phoenix. Shaw is momentarily distracted by the Professor's communicator beeping. Once he picks it up, he realizes that it's an SOS message from the Beast. He seems to be in big trouble. Shaw scoffs, tosses the communicator into the fire nearby, and without paying any heed to Charles's protests, he proceeds with a ritual. He recites an incantation addressing the Phoenix God. He talks about life, death, creation, and annihilation. Jean slowly removes her hood hood in the background and steps into the pentagram as Shaw continues reciting. By the end of the incantation, Shaw spreads his arms out wide and then proclaims the god to show itself. Suddenly, a huge burst of fire launches itself out of the pentagram, engulfs Jean entirely, and then shoots straight towards the sky. Shaw continues his incantation while Jean struggles to accommodate the god slowly occupying her body and mind. On the outside of the mansion, we see the same fiery phoenix from Jean's vision falling directly on the mansion from the sky above. If Shaw had known or read anything about gods, then he would have known that most of them can be finicky. They don't take it kindly when they are addressed by mortal kind, and they latch onto every word used to address them. When Jean opens her eyes, her whites have been replaced with pure black color with slivers of red in it. The Phoenix God has definitely taken to her body as the host, but it isn't one bit pleased by Shaw's actions. The god doesn't like Shaw, and it's mainly because of the life he leads and his recent actions. He's an immoral, capitalizing being that only thinks for himself. The greatest power in the universe according to Shaw is the Phoenix God, yet the host he chooses is from the X-Men he just betrayed. Phoenix then uses its powers to annihilate every member of the Hellfire Club in its vicinity, and each one of them slowly burns until nothing remains and everything is dust. Shaw is scared to his core. He begins to ask for mercy, but the Phoenix scoffs and says that Shaw doesn't deserve any mercy, but he also doesn't deserve death, at least for now. The Phoenix wants Shaw to stay alive until the Phoenix can plunder any and everything Shaw has managed to amass over the years in its name. Within seconds, using her powers, the Phoenix has plundered Shaw's every asset and every bank account. Once done plundering, she faces Shaw, puts her hands on his head, and then burns him to a crisp. With rage, the Phoenix chucks Shaw's skeleton away, but is soon interrupted by Charles calling for Jean. "Silence, Charles. I've been taking orders from an inferior mind for much too long already. Watch now as my thoughts become deeds, my wishes become reality. It all starts here in this wretched building. The hearts and minds of 100 world leaders, so devious and filled with ambition, becoming purified and filled with nothing but love. Done!" And then the Phoenix continues on with her miracles. She heals the terminally ill children in a hospital 3 blocks away. She saves a jilted lover about to commit suicide 8 blocks away. She then focuses her attention 16 blocks away, where 2 policemen are poking at the dead body of a homeless person who was killed in a hate crime. When the Phoenix learns what happened to the man, even she can't fathom the evil and hatred every man on Earth carries inside his heart. The Phoenix then senses interference with her mind and gets to know that it is Charles meddling with her. She turns her head towards the professor, who goes on to remind the Phoenix that she is Jean and she is just a teenager. She shouldn't be performing miracles, and especially shouldn't be bringing back the dead to life. The two begin to have a psychic battle, and Charles begins to sweat profusely due to the sheer strain the Battle of the Minds is having on him. But then the Phoenix begins to sweat as well. The two continue to battle until there is a huge explosion throughout the Hellfire Mansion that blows every window to pieces. Once the explosion subsides, Storm and Piotr come back to their senses and quickly rush to the professor's aid. Jean tells them all that the professor's okay, and for the first time in the past few hours, Piotr and Aurora have heard Jean's voice. "What about you, Jean? Are you okay? Is that thing still in your system or what?" asks Piotr, and a bewildered Jean, who is looking down on her neck, watching the flames recede into a phoenix tattoo, says, "To tell you the God's honest truth, Piotr, I really haven't a clue." Suddenly, the team is distracted by the professor's communicator that is beeping and then begins to broadcast Beast's voice to them. Aurora picks up the communicator and Beast breaks down upon hearing her voice. He confesses how stupid he was, and he tells them all how he was ambushed by the Brotherhood when he went to meet Naomi. Aurora tells Beast to take it one step at a time, and he confesses that he let the Brotherhood beat the living hell out of him but did not say a word. Sadly, it was already too late because they knew everything about Magneto from his chats with Naomi. Beast lies in an alley covered in trash while he sobs uncontrollably, and the consequences of this revelation dawn on the X-Men. Suddenly, the entire New York City is engulfed in chaos because pieces of metal start rising in the air. Huge metal pipes, underground cables, cars, and streetlights all rise into the air. Jean, Aurora, and Piotr watch everything fly into the air, and this is it. This is when Aurora realizes that she is over Henry. She was having a tough time moving on after their breakup, but now that he has gone and messed things up so badly, all feelings she had for Henry are now dead. We then see the metal pieces that flew into the air have formed a message in the sky. "Thank you, Charles." It's clear to everyone, Magneto is back, and he is back with a vengeance. Ultimate X-Men number 28, Shadowy Proposals. We pick our story back up after 2 issues. Magneto has risen to power, and the X-Men are being blamed not only for his actions, but also his resurrection. They have been labeled as terrorists. The X-Men are pursuing Magneto, but both parties are also being pursued by the Ultimates, Nick Fury's last line of defense against world-ending threats. The X-Men want to capture Magneto to prove their innocence, but when the 2 teams go head-to-head, neither of them comes out victorious. The X-Men manage to evade the Ultimates, but Charles Xavier isn't so lucky. He is captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. and is being transported to Camp X-Factor, a new detention center and prison specifically designed to hold mutants. Magneto, meanwhile, is busy in his otherworldly citadel above the Arctic Circle, where he's building a machine that will amplify his power of magnetism to reach anywhere across the globe. He then makes an appearance in front of Charles holographically and tells him that it was always Erik's plan to separate Charles's students from him, because he wants to recruit them. Meanwhile, Wolverine has returned from his mission on the Savage Land with Scott, but he has returned alone. This is quite cryptic, as Jean refuses to believe that Scott died in the Savage Land. The Brotherhood has blown up a few buildings on the intersection of Madison and Clark. The terrorist mutants escape in a car without even being detected while reveling in their victory. They are bloodthirsty for human blood and plan to blow up cities once they are free from this mess. Suddenly, they spot a huge man standing in the middle of the road blocking their way. At first, the Brotherhood goons suspect nothing, but then their resident telepath probes the huge man's mind and realizes that it's Colossus. But by the time she makes this discovery, it is already too late. The car crashes into Colossus and sends the 2 terrorist mutants barreling out of it and onto the street in front of them. Before the 2 mutants inside the car can retaliate, they realize that they are high above the street on an ice spire, all thanks to Iceman. Iceman then checks on Wolverine, who has managed to incapacitate the jet and pilot the Brotherhood goons were supposed to use to exit New York City. Amidst all this, Storm was given the monumental task of making a public appearance and putting out the fires using her powers. Storm sits cross-legged high above in the air while concentrating to ensure that she can make it rain in the few blocks where the buildings were on fire. The firefighters and people on the street take notice of this unnatural occurrence and then spot Storm in the air and put 2 and 2 together. On the street level, Colossus has the Brotherhood goons incapacitated and tied up using a nearby streetlight. Despite the plan seemingly going perfectly, only one question plagues the mind of every X-Men. Will this be enough to prove their innocence? Sadly, this question is instantly answered when they see the local news that night. The police and authorities have termed the terrorist attack as a joint venture between the X-Men and Brotherhood, simply because both were present at the scene of the crime. Despite witnesses and firefighters claiming that the X-Men were helping to prevent the situation from getting out of hand, the authorities are firm in their stance. The X-Men and the Brotherhood have been labeled as terrorist organizations, and this recent act of amnesty is labeled as a bribe by Nick Fury. Nick Fury's statement to the public is that he won't rest until all of the X-Men and the Brotherhood have been incarcerated. We then see that the news is being watched by a nuclear family consisting of a father, mother, and their only son. Both the parents are anti-mutant, while the son couldn't care less about what's going on in the news. We then see all the X-Men sitting around them and learn that they are using this family's house as their temporary safe house. Jean is using her powers to shield their presence, and despite them all being safe, Kitty Pryde can't help but feel like a perv when existing like this, especially when the dad thinks he is alone in the house, or when the plumber visits when the mom has a day off. Beast tells her that this is the safest place for them right now because all family members, known safe houses, and accomplices are right now compromised because S.H.I.E.L.D. knows everything. We then see Kitty Pryde check on Jean, who has been pretending to do great, but really has been struggling underneath it all. She breaks down due to the recent Phoenix fiasco, but more importantly because she can still hear the Phoenix inside her. Not only can she hear its whispers, but it can also hear what the Phoenix has been trying to tell her about what happened between Scott and Logan in the Savage Land. We now head to the Camp X-Factor prison in Cuba, specially designed by S.H.I.E.L.D. to house dangerous mutants. Charles Xavier is being held in a specialized cell designed to dampen his psychic abilities. Despite the dampeners, the S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have a powerful enough psychic at their disposal that can probe Charles's mind. This is why Nick Fury has come in person to have a chat with the professor. Nick Fury tries to tell Charles to see things from his Ted's perspective. First, Charles, their ally, makes the Shield believe that he has disposed of Magneto, and then Magneto comes back and kills thousands. So now Shield has no choice but to suspect Charles. Xavier feels that this theory is far-fetched and preposterous, and Nick Fury implores him to give up the location of the X-Men. He promises to not hurt Charles's students, but the professor is no snitch. This is why Nick Fury is forced to pull out the ace up his sleeve, Nightcrawler. Shield captured Nightcrawler a few days ago, and though Kurt can defend himself against psychic probes, the days of torture has him failing now. You know that I'm good for this, man, and that I'm only doing this so we can catch Magneto in time. But Charles turns his face away from Nick Fury and says, "It doesn't matter, General. I will not betray my students. They're the only hope either of our species has left." Back in Chicago, Wolverine stands over the incapacitated bodies of around 50 men from the police department, all because one of them made the mistake of pulling out a gun on him. This image is being broadcast on the evening news while Logan sits in the safe house with his feet up on the table. The X-Men surround him and they can't believe Logan. While all of them are trying to project a better image of the X-Men to humans around the world, Logan has simply gone and incapacitated 60+ public servants. Logan says they should be glad he didn't kill them, and that is when Jean takes a jibe at him. She implies that Logan murdered Scott, and this goes on for a while until Beast steps in and tells them that they will get nowhere if they begin fighting amongst themselves. Soon, the X-Men have bigger concerns when after a huge flash of light, they spot Magneto standing directly in front of them. Bobby springs into action and fires a huge shard of ice directly at Magneto, only to watch it phase directly through Erik. Magneto smiles and tells the X-Men that this is simply a holographic projection. Neither can he hurt them, nor can they hurt him in their current situation. The X-Men then learn why Magneto has come to meet them. He wants to recruit them. He goes on to tell them about Forge, the latest addition to the Brotherhood. Forge is a mutant with exceptional technological capabilities. He can build anything and everything from scratch as long as he can imagine it. This is why he is helping Magneto build a machine that will bring the entire world to its knees. Magneto then offers them 7 days of time to make their decision. He claims that he is informing them in advance because he wants Charles's students to be on the winning side when everything goes down. Magneto then simply fades out of the room, and the X-Men are left with a huge question looming above their heads. Ultimate X-Men number 33, Enemies Reunite. Magneto tried to bring the world to its knees, but failed miserably thanks to the joint efforts of the X-Men and the Ultimates. Magneto has now been captured and is held in a pure plastic prison. Though he managed to narrowly escape once using a metal pin inserted in someone's knee, he was soon apprehended again. Meanwhile, Wolverine's attempt to kill Scott in the Savage Land was unearthed when Scott returned alive and took Wolverine out using his optic blasts. He then kicked Wolverine off of the team, and that is where the story picks back up again. Magneto, who is now held in a plastic prison, is busy reading fan mail from humans around the world when Professor Xavier comes to meet him. Erik feels that this could be a fruitful conversation, and so he decides to confront Charles. They start by talking about the letters Erik receives in prison from Homo sapiens around the world. Love letters, letters of mercy, donations, incoherent ramblings. Erik receives them all, and he has a fun time going through them. Over the course of their conversation, Charles tries to appear to Erik's good side and tells him that there is still a chance to be saved if only he would align himself with Xavier's pacifist views of coexistence with humans. Erik scoffs at this idea, and Charles then brings up Erik's children, Wanda and Pietro. Both of them are standing outside, eager to meet Erik and make amends, but their father is in no mood to do so. He finds his children to be treacherous traitors, which is why he punished Quicksilver by slicing his kneecaps. Charles, however, brought up Erik's children only to strike a nerve, because he then goes on to remind Erik that he once loved a human, his children's mother, Isabel. Charles tells Erik that he hates his children so much because it reminds Erik of the time he fell in love with a human, a relationship that he now detests and condemns because interspecies romance is wrong. Meanwhile, in the Canadian wilderness, we see Wolverine murder a bear in cold blood and then begin eating its raw meat. Suddenly, he is approached by Cyclops, who has tracked Logan down. The two of them converse, and it is revealed that Cyclops has come here to apologize to Wolverine. Logan can't believe his ears. After he tried to kill Scott, why does Cyclops need to apologize to him? Scott sighs and tells Logan that over the past few months he has had some time to think about his actions and what he did was wrong. He was supposed to be the leader of the X-Men. He's supposed to propagate the ideals of peace. Yet the moment he was crossed by someone attempting to get his girlfriend, he acted like an alpha male, mortally wounded Logan, and kicked him off the team. Scott feels that all the work they did to help Logan rehabilitate has gone down the drain thanks to this one action of his. Charles. He then says that Wolverine should come back, but Logan tells him that he doesn't deserve the X-Men, especially after having tried to kill Scott. Since the Weapon X program, all Wolverine has known is killing, and he is not only a danger to himself, but also the X-Men if he joins them. Scott smiles and tells Wolverine that it is precisely the reason why he should be joining them, and then sweetens the pot by revealing an artifact from Logan's past. Scott tells Wolverine that Weapon X tried to destroy any and every evidence of the program, yet S.H.I.E.L.D. was able to recover something that belonged to Logan. Cyclops then hands a golden wedding ring to Logan that has an inscription on its underside, "To Jane with all my love." This convinces Wolverine. He reluctantly agrees to return with Scott, and when Scott uses his remote to reveal the Blackbird already flying above them, Logan realizes that Scott knew he would always agree to return once he was shown the ring. Back in Magneto's prison, Erik has grown tired and irritated of Charles's probing question. He orders the guards stationed outside to escort Charles out, but before Charles leaves, he asks one seemingly innocent question. "How is Pietro?" Charles smiles as he knows he has managed to strike a breakthrough with Erik. He goes on to tell Erik that thanks to Quicksilver's ultra-fast metabolism, he was able to make a full recovery within 2 months after the injury. And though Quicksilver still walks with a slight limp, he is able to run at his original speeds without an issue. Charles smiles and leaves Erik with another tidbit, that although the government plans to prosecute him, Charles plans on defending him in his trial. And before leaving, Charles not only wipes the little argument he and Erik had earlier from the guards' memories, but also from the security tapes of the facility. Ultimate X-Men number 35, The Hunter is the Hunted. Things are bad for Wolverine. He has been on a hiatus from the X-Men, but while in New York, he was gunned down and severely injured by a mysterious group that, out of all the vehicles in the world, operates out of a diaper truck. Because Wolverine was seriously wounded, he followed Spider-Man and found a safe place at Peter Parker's home. Days later, after Wolverine is sufficiently healed, he gets ready to leave but soon stops dead in his tracks when he spots the same diaper truck that shot him up outside Peter Parker's house. This is where our story picks back up again. The mysterious Black Ops team sits outside Peter Parker's house in 3 duty diaper vans, keeping a close eye on Wolverine inside. They can track his vitals as well as current position. They're led by a mysterious woman named Tara, and she and her men are currently arguing about why Wolverine is holed up inside a suburban home in New York City. One of the men feels that the Parkers could be Wolverine's relatives, but that idea is quickly shot down once they conduct a background check on the house. The house is owned by a deceased Ben Parker and is currently the home to his wife and nephew. The team continues to argue about how they should proceed while Tara, their leader, is solely focused on one thought: what the hell is Wolverine doing in Queens? Meanwhile, Wolverine and Spider-Man have been keeping a close eye on the vans outside. Wolverine tells Parker that those vans are filled with Black Ops operatives, and Peter can't help but make jokes about their choice of vehicles. Wolverine scowls at Peter's remarks, and Spider-Man then goes on to tell him that cracking jokes is how he copes with tense situations. Wolverine asks for Spider-Man's help in escaping his home without the Black Ops operatives following them, and Peter quickly puts on his spider suit. His spider sense begins to tingle, but Peter can't quite point out the danger in his vicinity until he watches Logan unsheath his claws and stab himself directly in the throat. "Ah, oh my god!" screams Spider-Man as he catches a dead Logan in his arms. On the outside, Tara and her man can't believe that Logan is dead, but they are even more surprised when they watch Wolverine's vitals come back to life and his marker moving on the radar. His marker is rushing outside the house, directly towards their van. Tara screams for her men to take cover, but chaos ensues within the next second. Their van flips, tumbles through the air, and then lands on its side. Tara and her men are rattled around like ragdolls, and by the time they regain their senses, Wolverine and Spider-Man are long gone. We then see the diner where Wolverine was shot up by Tara and her men 2 days ago. The diner is now closed, its windows have been boarded up, and the poor owner sits outside in a depressed state of mind while drinking a now cold coffee. His nightmares come to life when he sees Wolverine menacingly approaching him. The man tries to scream, but Wolverine grabs him by the throat and begins his interrogation. He wants to know how the owner of the diner miraculously escaped moments before the entire establishment was peppered with bullets. The owner is at a loss for words, and that is when Wolverine slightly unsheathes his claws and places them delicately under the man's chin. "You better answer the guy. He is not as nice as he looks," jokes Spider-Man from behind Logan, who gives him a disapproving look. "Sorry." Logan goes back to questioning the man, who tells him that the woman that came into the diner handed him a note. a note that said that Logan was a mutant terrorist and that he should evacuate the establishment as soon as possible. The owner did as he was told because the woman claimed to be from the FBI. But when it was all over, the owner found out that the FBI knew nothing about the shooting, nor a mutant terrorist. The cops came and gathered evidence, but with no insurance and no FBI involvement, the owner's life is now ruined. Logan lets go of the man and asks him to run away. The owner doesn't need to be told twice because the next second he scurries out of the alley and into the city. Spider-Man then asks Logan if the Black Ops operatives were really from the FBI, and Logan simply shakes his head. He knows they are highly trained personnel from a mysterious, shadowy group that has access to Logan's Weapon X file, because that is how they are tracking him. Logan knows that Spider-Man isn't going to stop following him, and so he takes him to his next destination, Natasha Romanoff's penthouse. Logan enters Natasha's penthouse and asks for her help. The two quip back and forth for the next couple of minutes, and we learn that Logan and Natasha dated each other for 5 days, until Natasha found out that Logan was simply using her for information. Logan apologizes to her and then asks if she knows anything about the mysterious Black Ops team hunting him down. Natasha tells him that neither her nor her boss, Nick Fury, knows anything about it, and if what Logan says is true, then whoever the team is reporting to likely won't let Natasha or Nick Fury near any vital information either. As Natasha comes to this conclusion, she realizes why Logan is actually here. He wanted to see if the team hunting him would attack Natasha's penthouse to capture him. This would seemingly prove that neither S.H.I.E.L.D. nor her are involved in this operation. By now, a shivering Spider-Man has entered the conversation with some much needed comic relief. He knows Natasha because he helped her a few weeks ago and she owes him $80. Natasha ignores Spider-Man and tells Logan to leave, but Spider-Man continues to demand his $80. With the conversation going nowhere, Logan heads out with Spider-Man in tow and reaches a rooftop where he can catch the scent of the men that were chasing him. Spider-Man tells Logan that he can help him and warn him about any incoming dangers thanks to his Spidey sense, but before Spider-Man can say anything else, a missile comes flying through the air and hits Logan directly in the chest. Uh-oh, is all Spider-Man can say as he watches his spider sense fail him and Logan get dragged away by the missile. The missile flies through the New York airspace at incredible speed until it disintegrates into a huge explosion against a building a few blocks away from Spider-Man. Ultimate X-Men number 36, out of the frying pan into the fire. We pick up seconds before the missile hits Wolverine directly in the chest, and this time see things through Logan's perspective. Seconds ago, when Spider-Man was telling him about his spider sense, Logan could smell burning fuel approaching him rapidly. But before he could do anything, a missile came flying through the air and lodged itself in Logan's chest and dragged him along with it. Moments before impact, Logan managed to use his claws to dislodge the missile from his chest and leap away. The explosion behind him sends him flying out of the disintegrating building, while his back takes most of the force of the impact. A few blocks away, Spider-Man is too engrossed by the missile exploding to notice the two Black Ops helicopters approaching him. The helicopters start firing at Spidey, who barely manages to escape the bullets thanks to his spider sense. Now my spider sense is going off? Spider-Man leaps off of the building and then uses his web to latch onto the tail of one of the helicopters. Ah man, I can't believe it. I just screamed like a girl. Well, Mr. Spider-Man, the next time you want to know why people don't take you seriously, just remind yourself, you're the superhero that screams like a girl. And as Spider-Man uses his web to swing towards another helicopter, he realizes he doesn't have a plan, at least not a good one, because when he tries to tie both of the helicopters together, his web is sliced off by one of the rotors, which sends him crashing through a nearby window. He crashes in front of a homeless kid who is watching TV and eating Pop-Tarts. Spider-Man ignores the kid and peeks out of the window, only to find out that he is quite close to where the missile exploded. He swings directly towards the flames while screaming for Logan, only to back off when the heat gets to him. He continues to scream Logan's name and look for him when we spot Logan eyeing Spider-Man from a dark alley. Though he can reach out to Peter, he feels it's best that he stays out of the kid's life. Logan sits in the dark alley with third-degree burns all over his body while waiting for his healing factor to kick in. Logan is in Hell's Kitchen and 3 drunk delinquents slowly approach him and try to bully him. But Logan is in no mood for shenanigans. He unsheathes the claws in his left arm, and this is enough to send 3 drunk youngsters scrambling away. As they run off into the night, Logan senses something is off. He quickly stands up only to be approached by a mysterious horned figure from the shadows. The figure wants to know about the explosion and if Logan is responsible for it. "The hell are you?" growls Logan, and the mysterious figure steps out of the shadows and replies, "This is Hell's Kitchen. I ask the answers around here." It is none other than Matt Murdock, aka the Daredevil. Daredevil uses his senses to quickly determine that Wolverine is not like other humans. Logan confesses that he is a mutant and that he is being followed. Daredevil concludes that whoever this mysterious organization is that is pursuing Logan isn't concerned about the city and its citizens. "We're gonna have a problem, you and me?" asks Logan, but he is quickly cut off by Daredevil, who says, "They're here!" Logan quickly takes cover and peeks out of the alley, only to see a fleet of diaper vans approaching his location. Logan decides he is done running and it is time he faces these men head on, but when he looks behind him for Daredevil's support, he is long gone. Realizing that he has to do this alone, Logan steps into the light with his claws unsheathed, only to be confronted by Tara, who is mocking him. She knows that Logan had his memory wiped, which is why he doesn't even remember his real name. She taunts him. "I mean, is your name really Logan, or did someone give you that name? You know, named you? Like, I don't know, like someone might name some mangy mutt dog?" Logan attacks Tara and her men, and gunfire begins to echo throughout Hell's Kitchen. Logan takes multiple swipes at Tara's men, only to realize that he isn't able to penetrate their armor. Tara orders her men to cease fire and then tells Logan about their adamantium alloy deflective armor. She then orders her men to wrap things up. They have opened fire in an American city and it won't be long before authorities show up. "Who the hell are you?" growls Logan, and Tara responds, "Quiet, doggy." Tara then takes out her handgun and shoots Logan directly in the head. She reveals that these are adamantium bullets and she only has a few at her disposal. She expected a single bullet to penetrate Logan's skull, but when it didn't, she decided to take it a step further. Tara points the gun at Logan's head again and fires 3 more shots into it. It is then that we see Tara's true colors. She is a jealous, egotistical maniac who is appalled by the fact that Logan doesn't remember who she is. She is appalled that after killing all the unnamed people during his Weapon X, Logan now wants a clean slate and wants to join the X-Men. She is jealous that after all he did, Logan is now famous. "Seems like you don't have to be a human nowadays to be famous. You can be an animal dressed as a human and you can be famous. And you, Logan? You can look me right in the eye and you don't know who I am? Good! Live with it, animal. Live with it!" Tara is about to shoot Logan again in a fit of rage, but that is when something comes flying through the air and smacks her directly in the face. "I've heard enough. It's Daredevil and he is hungry for some action. Get out of my kitchen." Ultimate X-Men number 37, Logan's Wife. Jean walks through what looks like an abandoned alley while calling out to Logan. She looks around the dark and gloomy alley when she hears a faint voice calling out for help. It's Logan. Jean rushes towards the voice only to find what she fears the most, a huge ball of fire with a dragon face engulfing a dying Logan. It's the Phoenix Force, and this is a vision of nothing good to come. "Jean, help me," says Logan as we see Jean snap out of her vision and back to reality. She is in Xavier's Institute for Gifted Youngsters having her breakfast, when she suddenly faints due to the sheer exhaustion of experiencing the vision. Scott manages to catch her in the nick of time, and when Jean comes back to her senses, she asks about Wolverine. Nobody has heard from him in a long time, and that is when Jean breaks the news to them. She fears that Logan might be in mortal danger. Back in Hell's Kitchen, Daredevil stands on top of one of the diaper vans and orders Tara and her men to stand down. Meanwhile, Logan has slowly started to recover from the adamantium bullets in his head. Daredevil orders Tara and her men again to stand down, but the insane woman simply calls him a freak and then points her handgun at him. But before either Tara or her men can pull the trigger, Spider-Man swings in to save the day and knocks out a couple of Tara's men in an instant. "Sirius 9, fan out!" she screams at her men, and all of them scramble around to follow the latest order. They all begin shooting at Spider-Man, who stands beside Daredevil on top of the diaper van. "You idiot!" screams Daredevil and drags Peter behind the diaper van to avoid the bullets. Spider-Man then peeks out, shoots his web at Wolverine, and drags him behind the van as well. The 3 of them need to get away fast because the van could blow up at any moment. Daredevil drags Wolverine away while Spider-Man leaps to safety just in the nick of time. The resulting explosion from the shot-up van is big enough to graze Spider-Man, who doesn't spare a second to joke about it. "My tush is now singed. I hope you're both happy. I now have a singed tush." Daredevil asks him to be quiet because he can hear Tara and her men regrouping in the background. Meanwhile, Wolverine has recovered enough to pry the bullets out of his face, and then force his healing to seal up the wounds quickly. "That was the single most disgusting thing I have ever seen," proclaims Spider-Man as he hangs out on the wall behind Daredevil. Wolverine thanks Spider-Man for coming back to help him, and then catches Daredevil up to speed. He doesn't know who the blonde woman or her men are, but they aren't afraid to open fire in the middle of the city. Daredevil tells Logan that Hell's Kitchen sees daily gang fights in the back alley, which is why neither the residents nor do the police respond respond to any kind of ruckus or gunfire. Spider-Man tries to come up with a fresh new joke about Daredevil's attire, but he is quickly shushed. Daredevil can hear Tara's men forming a new plan, and it doesn't look good for them. He tells Logan that the men are low on ammo and that there is some sort of backup coming. Before the backup arrives, he wants Logan to lead these people away from the city so that no more civilians are injured or killed. Peter has had it. He has been asking Logan time and again to call the X-Men, but Wolverine simply refuses to do so. Why the hell won't you call the X-Men? You're one of the X-Men? He's the hairy one. Wolverine changes the subject quickly to avoid any more talks about the X-Men. He asks Daredevil to focus on Tara, and Matt tells him that she is headed for a rooftop while her men fan out in the streets. Wolverine looks at Spider-Man and asks him to get up on the roof where Tara is headed. Meanwhile, a block away, Tara runs ahead and climbs to the roof using a nearby fire escape. But before she can climb up fully, she is confronted by Wolverine. She tries to shoot him in the head again, but this time Logan dodges the gun and throws her to the ground. He then sits on top of her demanding answers, but Tara's hate for him is too much. She isn't ready to give him any kind of information, or for that matter, any kind of satisfaction. "Don't think I won't do it," screams Wolverine while pointing his claws at her, and that is when Tara's answer takes both him and Spider-Man by surprise. "I'm your wife!" She then punches him in the face, and Wolverine realizes that this was just a ploy to distract him long enough. "Why are you doing this to me? Who the hell are you?" Okay, I'm your sister. No wait, I'm your mother. Or better yet, I'm your cousin. Animal. I'll never tell. You'll never know. You hear me? I would never give you the satisfaction. Logan screams in rage and then uses his claws to cut Tara just below her left eye while still interrogating her. She calls Logan an animal, mutant filth, but before she can say more, Logan raises his claws ready to kill her. But in that moment, Spidey's spider sense goes off and he warns Logan just in the nick of time. The next second, two choppers surround the rooftop and begin firing their miniguns at Spider-Man and Wolverine. Spider-Man manages to escape and jump off of the building, but Logan isn't so lucky. He is soon peppered with hundreds of bullets, which leaves him gravely injured and unable to carry his body weight. Tara too is having a stroke of bad luck because when she grabs onto the skids of one of the helicopters, it breaks off and sends her hurtling towards the asphalt below. Spidey and Logan watch in dismay as Peter jokes, "Well, if you're not gonna ask her out, I will." Logan then falls to the ground again and Spider-Man offers to take him to the hospital. Logan rejects the offer and tells Peter that all the bullets went straight through him, which should allow his healing factor to kick in and take care of the injuries within an hour. They are then confronted by Daredevil, who tells them that this recent skirmish has injured an old woman down on the street. He is going to go and take care of the situation, but he wants Spider-Man to lead Wolverine out of the city before anyone gets injured. Daredevil then leaves and an exasperated Spider-Man turns towards Logan and pleads, "Why won't you just call the X-Men? I really don't understand that. You've got to give me something." Logan sighs. The kid has stuck with him and helped him all this while, and he owes Peter an explanation. He tells Peter that Charles Xavier has been too kind to him. He has rehabilitated Wolverine even when Logan originally intended to murder the professor, which is why he doesn't wish to burden or bring more trouble to Charles's door. Charles is fighting for something noble, and Wolverine's presence will only get in the way of that. Logan doesn't remember a huge chunk of his past, but from what he knows, he gathers that he has killed hundreds of people, thousands of innocents, and it is no surprise when everyone calls him an animal. This is why he doesn't want to call the X-Men. This is why he wants to face his foes and his past on his own. Logan then growls in pain and falls to the ground when Spidey says, "Well, you're probably going to be pretty mad once you heal and wake up." "Why? What did you do?" "Before, when I couldn't find you, I made a teeny tiny call." And we then see the X-Men arrive in the Blackbird and land on the rooftop. Beast, Colossus, Cyclops, Marvel Girl, Storm, Iceman, Shadowcat, and Nightcrawler, they're all here to save Logan. The story so far. The X-Men have learned a few things about Logan's past. They know that he was captured and tortured by the Weapon X program. They wiped his memories, gave him the new name Logan, and coated his skin in adamantium. They get to know that Logan was previously known as James Howlett, and Captain America remembers him from his time as a paratrooper with the Army. The men used to call him Lucky Jim back then because no matter the situation, Logan always survived. Over the years, as Logan continued to act as a disposable assassin for the Weapon X program, he was given the name Wolverine. Weapon X or someone like them seems to have found Wolverine again. It has now been numerous days since these men have been hunting Wolverine. They are led by a blonde woman named Tara, and they manage to corner and gravely injured Logan at a diner in New York City. Logan then makes a hasty escape, but the group continues hunting him down mercilessly. He is on the verge of death when suddenly the X-Men, Daredevil, and Spider-Man come to his rescue. When Wolverine was brought back at the mansion, the professor used his power powers to probe his mind. During their sessions and while going through Logan's memories, Wolverine was able to recognize Tara from his time with Weapon X. And while all of this was going on, Jean was keeping an eye out for them and protecting the mansion. During one of her patrols, she detected a group of men spying on them, and Jean promptly attacked them. During this attack, Jean's Phoenix Force rose up and ended up killing the group of men. Once done, the Phoenix Force went back to sleep while Jean was left unconscious. This is where our story picks back up again. Ultimate X-Men number 39, Something to Hold On To. Jean lies unconscious in the middle of nowhere when suddenly she is woken up by the cries of Logan bounding towards her. They found her, and as Jean wakes up and sits back up, she sees Logan running towards her along with Nightcrawler, Cyclops, Beast, Storm, and Kitty Pryde in their tow. Scott puts his coat around Jean, but Jean seems too jittery and restless. She keeps repeating the same phrase again and again. "I can hear you, stop talking about me." Scott tries to calm Jean down, and the entire gang soon learns that Jean's powers are working in overdrive. She can hear everyone's thoughts, which is why she wants everyone to stop talking about her. Scott consults with Professor X telepathically, and Charles asks Scott to get Jean to the mansion as soon as possible. This is a job for Nightcrawler, who promises Jean that he will complete the journey in as little jumps as possible. Poof! Nightcrawler and Jean vanish in an instant and soon appear in front of Charles Xavier at the mansion. The professor takes Jean into his arms, calms her mind, and then tells Nightcrawler to go and rejoin his teammates. Jean should be fine soon. Back near the helicopter crash, Logan, Scott, Piotr, and Beast study the crashed debris as Nightcrawler appears beside them. In the background, Kitty Pryde, Storm, and Iceman discuss how they are going to proceed with the pursuit of Weapon X's members. Nightcrawler tells everyone that Jean is in the care of the professor, and he then proceeds to talk to Logan about Weapon X. Nightcrawler hints that he has his own history with the Weapon X program, which is why he wants to accompany Logan. Soon, the entire team joins in, and though Logan wants to go alone, he has no choice but to agree with their demands when Scott says, "This is a mutant hate crime. These people put mutant life in danger. We're all coming." On the other side of town in Woodstock, New York City, at an abandoned warehouse, Tara is busy getting reprimanded by her seniors. The recent fiasco and the discovery of their spy team is forcing her seniors to abandon her current mission. Tara isn't happy one bit and calls her superior a coward, and this sets into motion what is probably the worst moment of her career. Her senior goes on to tell Tara that she had an unlimited budget and unlimited access to all secret ops resources to capture Wolverine. But what she and her team did, publicly shooting up Wolverine in a crowded city and now getting her cover blown, is the worst thing she could have done. The superior orders Tara and her team to leave the country as soon as possible, especially now that Charles Xavier and his X-Men are involved. This is because Charles Xavier is under the umbrella of Nick Fury, and Nick Fury is protected by the president himself. So if Tara and her seniors continue the operation, they risk blowing their cover and risk revealing that they are acting against the president's wishes. "You can't do this! This is war, damn it!" screams Tara, and her senior simply responds, "Yes, it is. And you, girl, are a casualty." Tara's eyes finally widen with horror and the realization because she finally understands that it is all over for her and her team. Her men argue whether they should continue fighting or leave the country when Tara suddenly notices that the warehouse has become awfully cold. Within the next second, ice starts forming on their equipment, and soon their computers begin to crack and break due to the sheer cold. Tara and her team know that the X-Men are here, but before they can arm themselves and form some kind of plan, the front door of the warehouse blasts open and the entire X-Men team barges in. It's a huge standoff as Tara points a gun at them while Cyclops arms himself, warning Tara to put her gun down. The next second, something unthinkable happens. Tara fires her gun in quick succession, and once the smoke clears away, the X-Men realize that she has shot all her teammates and is now pointing the gun at her own head. Wolverine and Nightcrawler instantly jump into action to try and reach her before she can pull the trigger, but Tara had already made her choice when she killed all her teammates. She fires off the last shot, and within seconds, it is all over. Tara lies on the ground bleeding from her head as Storm tries to shield young Kitty Pryde from this horrific sight. Wolverine takes a deep breath and then lets out a primal scream out of sheer frustration. But that is when Scott hears something that tenses up his entire body. A helicopter. No, multiple helicopters. Somebody is coming. And Scott is right. The next minute, the entire warehouse is surrounded by 4 military helicopters that slowly descend, and out steps S.H.I.E.L.D.'s very own Timothy Dugan, the commander of the Mutant Ops Division that was part of the project that made Captain America. He is disappointed in the X-Men for the way they handled things here here at the warehouse, and when Logan tries to jump in on the conversation, we see Dugan address Logan as James. Logan is confused because the man talks as though he knows who he used to be, as though he knows everything about Logan's past. Was Logan's real name James? What else does Dugan know? But before Logan can ask any questions, Dugan continues berating the X-Men for handling the situation poorly. There are 6 dead bodies that won't answer any questions and destroyed frozen computers that won't power up without destroying their hard drives. He then goes on to scold them for using the big-headed idea of approaching the situation head-on by blasting through the front door. He tells them that there is a lot more at stake here than they realize. They needed a way to interrogate or at least trace Tara's connections, but now that she is dead and all her equipment is destroyed, they have no leads. He goes on to tell them that Tara was just the grunt. They needed her to get to her seniors because whoever is hunting Werewolf and knows about the Weapon X program has friends in high places. Places high enough where he can get top secret and classified information that is only supposed to be available to the president. The fact that Tara existed and had so many resources at her disposal means that somebody is planning a coup. Somebody plans to take out the US president from the inside. Storm takes in all this information and realizes that none of them is asking the right questions, which is why she asks, why were they attacking Logan? And that is when, for a microsecond, Dugan seems to smile. He then quickly goes back to his stoic self and explains to the X-Men that Logan is the weakest link among them. In this political climate of mutant hatred, the fact that Logan is a trained military assassin can be used in a number of ways to forward one's political agenda. Logan could be used as the sole living proof for the conspiracy that mutants are controlling the US government from the inside. They can also use Logan's past operations to paint mutants in the worst possible picture. Anything is possible, which is why Logan is the key to any political victory in the current scenario. Dugan sighs because there is nothing more he can do here. The only thing he could do was to have the X-Men learn from their mistakes, and that job's over. He orders his Yager team to sweep up the entire warehouse and then pack up. As Dugan leaves the facility, he says to the X-Men, slavery split this country in two, centuries ago. Who knows what mutants will do to it before it's all said and done. No offense. But in the Xavier's Institute for Gifted Youngsters, Jean is sitting in the windowsill, seeming to be talking to someone close to her who is in the room. She sits in the dark as she struggles to come to terms with her recent actions of killing all the people she encountered. The voice tells her that she needs to be strong because the professor is here to help her, and so are they. The lights in the room suddenly turn on, and in walks Cyclops holding a tray with hot food for Jean. He asks Jean if she was talking to someone, and Jean says no, and we then see that the room had been empty all along. Jean and Scott look out of the window and spot Wolverine sitting alone, struggling with his thoughts. He holds a ring in his hands as Jean speculates to Scott that this entire ordeal has likely been very hard on Wolverine, and all this time alone that he spends, Logan is maybe looking for something to hold on to. Ultimate X-Men number 40, Biblical Angel. The comic starts at the Warrington estate where Charles Xavier has arrived to meet Mr. and Mrs. Warrington. Sadly, he is greeted by the Guardian and the estate manager of the Warrington. The professor learns that the Warringtons do not stay at this estate. Only their 17-year-old son does, a son that they don't like very much because he's a mutant. Warren Warrington is seen as a liability by the Warringtons, which is why they are quite eager to hand him over to Charles and name him as Warren's legal guardian. Charles is appalled by the parents' treatment of Warren, but he also knows that the best choice for Warren is to leave this makeshift prison. He takes Warren back to the X-Mansion and signs on as his legal guardian. The X-Men are having a fun Sunday afternoon filled with poolside activities and a barbecue grill when the professor walks in with Warren in tow. Everybody greets Warren while the girls ogle over his angelic looks. Hank shows Warren to his room while near the pool Rogue begins having an outburst because Warren looks just like an angel, and for that matter, Kurt looks just like the devil. She feels that this revelation could have serious religious ramifications, and the professor agrees with her, but also implores all of them to give Warren some space and keep such serious matters for later discussion. Unbeknownst to everyone, Warren has been listening to this entire conversation from a window above them. And before the professor can touch on this matter again, the news of an angel presiding in their manor is leaked to the world. The next day, religious fanatics surround their compound while chanting quotes from the Bible and holding up various signs. Some signs call Professor resurrects the devil, while others claim that God himself was a mutant. This is utter chaos, and the professor isn't happy one bit. He already knows who is responsible for this leak, but he wants the person responsible to come out on his own. It was Hank, and his conversation on the X-Men fan site under an anonymous username is what leaked this news to the world. Jean is more than angry, she is furious. Despite being one of the most intelligent scientific minds on planet Earth, sometimes Hank can act like a real douchebag. First he let out the news about Magneto surviving to Blob, who was pretending to be Naomi, and now he has gone and told the world that an angel does indeed reside at the X-Mansion. Jean has to be pulled together by Scott, and she has no choice but to calm down. What is done is done. Beast tries to apologize desperately, but he is soon cut off by the professor, who can sense that Warren has flown away and left the mansion. Scott wants to assemble a team to retrieve Warren, but Charles only wants Storm to go and talk to him. This is a bit manipulative, but their only hope because Warren really likes Aurora. We then see Storm fly to a cliffside with overcast sky where Warren is sulking. Without intending to do so, Storm ends up changing the weather conditions, and despite her appeals, Warren decides to keep the skies clear. The two then go on to talk about what happened, and Warren reveals the conversation he overheard. He could feel everybody's eyes on him, and he knows that even in a circus full of freaks, he is the most hated one. Storm chuckles because Warren has got it all wrong. She tells Warren that they were all staring because, frankly, he is stunning. Secondly, Rogue can sometimes go overboard with her thoughts, but most importantly, she was worried about the PR nightmare this would create with various religious groups around the world. Storm and Warren then talk about Mr. Worthington, and Aurora learns that he has abandonment issues due to the way in which he was treated. She gets Warren to see that his parents' treatment of him doesn't define his self-worth. She then goes on to tell Warren that as a part of the X-Men, he will get to fight for what is right. He will get to fight for not only humans and mutants, but also for himself. She tells him that all the years she has spent with the X-Men, she has been able to establish her own identity, that though people see her for her powers, or just because she is a mutant when she saves lives, she can use her words, and even if 5 people listen to her, at least one of them is bound to see her for who she is. And then when it comes to Warren and his appearance, she bets that 1 out of 2 people will be listening to him, and that too, quite intently. This gives Warren an idea, and we see him fly away with a smile on his face. In the background, Aurora relaxes and smiles as well because she knows her job is done. We then see Warren land in front of the school compound and address them all, including all the present representatives of the news stations. He goes on to tell them that though he looks like an angel, he is just a 17-year-old boy, an ordinary 17-year-old boy that just happens to look like an angel because of his mutation. The next day, we see Hank sitting in a diner reading a newspaper, and the biggest headline is, "Angel is Mutant Hoax." Ultimate X-Men number 44, Hank Can't Catch a Break. We begin this issue with Warren and Logan training in the danger room. Warren is too inexperienced and he fails to notice Wolverine stalking him. When Logan leaps at him, Warren recalls in horror and falls to the ground. Warren has never hit anyone in life and the inexperience keeps getting to him. Logan tells Warren that he should train, but Warren is sure that he saw bloodlust in Wolverine's eyes for a moment. He tries to argue that Wolverine was about to kill him, and Wolverine is forced to put his claws a mere inch away from Warren's throat to prove the point that they were only practicing. The conversation, however, is cut short when Wolverine smells trouble inside the mansion. And trouble it is. Nick Fury is here to see the professor, and he is forced to reveal why he is here in front of all the X-Men. While using cryptic terms and phrases that won't legally put him in danger, Fury goes on to tell them about the recent attack on Wolverine by a covert team of Weapon X operatives, how this team was funded by and backed by high-ranking officials in the White House and US military. So high-ranking officials that even if the slightest snippet of this conversation was leaked out, or if Fury accused them without a proper proof, he would be executed for treason or worse, wiped from the face of the planet. He then goes on to reveal to Charles and the X-Men that these high-ranking officials believe that Charles is manipulating Fury and the President using his psychic powers, which is why the government and S.H.I.E.L.D. are now pro-mutants. Fury knows better. He knows Charles isn't manipulating them, but this is a game for PR representatives, and right now the President needs to distance himself from Charles and the X-Men. This is the reason why he has chosen a new team of young mutants, led by Emma Frost, to be the President's mutant representatives. This team consists of their former team member Beast and Cyclops' brother, Alex Summers. The rest of the team members include Dazzler and Karma. Fury then cryptically tells Charles that even though he isn't allowed to share any of this information, the President is going to hold a public conference tomorrow to reveal these new mutants to the world. He believes that the covert organization that was sponsoring the Weapon X representatives representatives to capture Wolverine will make their move tomorrow. Charles knows what needs to be done. He and the X-Men are not only supposed to protect the president, but also the New Mutants. The next day, the president is delivering a rousing speech with excerpts from Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech to promote mutant and human harmony. The rally is filled with mixed signs, some calling for mutant genocide, while some calling for peace among both the species. The president then goes on to introduce Emma Frost and her New Mutants, while Jean sulks on the ground because she feels the government has abandoned the X-Men. Her spirits are soon lifted when the X-Men get recognized by fans in the audience, but the fan who just recognized them recoils in horror. When Jean turns around, she spots a huge 100-foot sentinel simply hovering over the entire crowd. Above the chaos, they can hear the voice of the professor screaming, "Save the president! Save the mutants!" And everybody quickly jumps into action, including the sentinels. They start by targeting New Mutants while the X-Men desperately try to save them. Beast and a couple of the Secret Service personnel are knocked out by a direct blast while trying to save the president. Scott begins targeting the nearest Sentinel while Wolverine hitches a ride towards the face of another, all thanks to Warren Warrington. Although Warren is scared and struggling to lift Wolverine, he still manages to help Logan reach the face of a Sentinel. Sadly, Warren loses his grip at the last moment and Wolverine is only able to slice the Sentinel from his chest. Colossus catches Wolverine in the nick of time and Storm and Cyclops take care of the rest. Both of them order her to help the New Mutants and the Professor escape, but everybody's eyes widen with surprise as they realize that they might have lost Hank. Beast is trapped under a significant amount of rubble and might just be dead. Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk #1, 4 miles away. Wolverine wakes up covered in blood in the Tibetan mountains. He is in excruciating pain and can't feel his legs. It doesn't take long for him to remember that the Hulk tore him in half 4 minutes ago. Logan looks down and sees nothing but guts below his waist. He then sniffs the air to catch a scent of his legs and realizes that the Hulk threw them 4 miles away. Well, so much for being unbreakable. We see Logan make the excruciating journey to recover his legs, and while he does so, he can't help but blame the man that put him up to this task, Nick Fury. We then see a flashback where Nick Fury recruits Logan for an undercover job in his Harlem headquarters, a job that he wants to hide from his board members as well as the US government. Nick Fury introduces Logan to Betty Ross and Dr. Jennifer Walters. Betty is their PR agent, while Dr. Jennifer Walters is the one helping S.H.I.E.L.D. develop the super soldier serum. Her partner was none other than Bruce Banner. Bruce, or Hulk in this case, was publicly executed by S.H.I.E.L.D. for having killed 800 people in New York City after Betty dumped him for another man. S.H.I.E.L.D. nuked him, but the Hulk managed to survive the blast. They have tracked the Hulk across the world using various unexplained events: a bombing in Paris with no bomb residue, a massive cattle massacre in Ireland, and an earthquake in India where there were no fault lines. And the last signs they found of him were in the Tibetan mountains. Wolverine realizes that Fury wants to save his and the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s public image and execute Hulk before he gets discovered by the public. Logan takes up the job without anything in exchange because the thrill of hunting the Hulk is more than enough for him. Dr. Jennifer helps Logan sniff the radioactive serum that infects Bruce to help him track the Hulk. Before Wolverine leaves, she tells him, "Bruce is a nice man. Try to make it quick for him." We then see Logan travel to Tibet and drink in a bar to scope the place. He notices that there seem to be no women in the entire town, and he finds this to be quite fishy. Logan starts looking around the town and soon finds a yak herder making shady back alley deals with someone. He tracks the man into the mountains until he reaches a huge locked door. Logan heads inside and finds the Hulk surrounded by all the women from the village at his service. Hulk scowls as Wolverine approaches him, and we then see Logan's claws pop out. And this is how their fight began. Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk #2. Where has Hulk been? Bruce lies on the floor of an aircraft carrier as he remembers his horrific actions as the Hulk. He killed 815 people in New York, and 62 of them were below the age of 13. Which is why, now that he waits for S.H.I.E.L.D. to nuke him and the aircraft carrier, he accepts his fate. He deserves to die, but moments before the nuke hits, he transforms into the Hulk and uses the explosion to leap far away. "Hulk no fly!" screams Hulk as he crashes down into the water. Hulk swims in the water while cursing Betty for betraying him and trying to kill him. He also blames Bruce for falling in love with Betty in the first place. By the time he reaches the shore, he is in France and is transformed back into Bruce Banner. A month has passed and we see that Bruce has been pretending to be a guy named David, who has trouble getting over his ex-girlfriend. He has been going to therapy for the same, and his therapist is currently grilling him because David won't utter a word when he calls Betty. She tells him that Bruce is scared of Betty, of what she will say, which is why he doesn't speak to her. She keeps on pushing Bruce until he gets too much. Bruce transforms into the Hulk and throws the recliner through the wall of the therapist's office. This is how the Paris bombing came to be. A month later, we catch up with Bruce in a bar calling Betty again. He still refuses to utter a word when she picks up, and as the blank call keeps going, we see Bruce get angrier with every passing second and even call Betty a bitch in his head by the end of it. We then switch to County Clare, England, where Bruce is being grilled by some of his bigger colleagues that work on the farm for being vegan. This has gone on for days, and today when the men try to bully him again, he loses control and the Hulk lashes out. The Hulk kills the men and then begins chomping down on cows as an act of rebellion against the bullying while he was vegan. This is how the cow slaughter in Ireland came to be. A month later, we catch up with Bruce again. This time he is bald and living in the busy country of India. Bruce has called Betty's home again, but this time the call is picked up by a man. This sends Bruce's anger flying through the roof, and the next second he is transformed into the Hulk. This is how the earthquake in India came to be. Another month has passed and we see Bruce climbing a mountain until he reaches a large wooden door, the same door behind which Wolverine found the Hulk in the previous issue. Turns out this is the monastery and the residing place of Panchen Lama, one of the greatest scholars in Buddhism, only second to Dalai Lama. In Buddhist tradition, the Panchen Lama is responsible for identifying the reincarnated Dalai Lama and vice versa. As Bruce enters the monastery, he meets a young boy who is the actual Panchen Lama. He goes on to compare his and the Dalai Lama's relationship to the famous English saying, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Bruce is here to get some help in controlling his anger, and as he walks with the Panchen Lama through the monastery, the young man makes Bruce see things in a different light. What if it isn't Bruce who turns into the Hulk, but rather the Hulk who turns into Bruce? This new perspective hits Bruce like a huge rock, and the Panchen Lama simply says, "Chickens and eggs, Bruce. Chickens and eggs." We then catch up with Hulk where he currently is, staring down Wolverine at his front door while surrounded by all the women from the nearby village. Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk number 3, Betty's Rebellion. This issue is told from Wolverine's perspective, and Wolverine being Wolverine doesn't tell us the story in a linear manner. So for the sake of brevity, we will go over everything from the point when Logan first found Bruce lounging among women in the monastery. When Logan entered the monastery, the Hulk was awfully conversational, quite contrary to what he was told by Nick Fury. The Hulk welcomed him with women and drinks, but Logan politely refused. The two then go on to have a conversation that borders on the line of being civil, where Bruce deduces that Nick Fury must have sent Wolverine to kill him. The Hulk goes on to tell Logan that since arriving at the monastery, he has conquered his anger, which is why he can now talk in complete sentences. Bruce suggests that Logan should try it too, but his own calmness soon goes out the window when Logan brings up the subject of Betty dumping Bruce. The Hulk scowls in anger and tells Wolverine to leave the monastery, but Logan keeps pushing his luck. "Oh, you ain't so smart now that I'm talking about your lady friend, are you? You losing your cool, Brucey? Hulk say, leave!" Wolverine puts up his hand playfully and begins to leave, but that is when he decides to push his luck while at the front door. "Say, you wouldn't mind if I take Betty out sometime, you know, now that you don't care about her anymore?" And this is how it all started. Hulk rages with anger and punches Wolverine out of the monastery. He then leaps after him and punches him into some rock. Hulk then proceeds to stomp on Wolverine and then slams him into a nearby tree. Despite all the smack Wolverine was talking, Hulk proceeds to beat the living crap out of him. Then, in a fit of rage, he picks up Wolverine and tears him in half. We then see Hulk fling Logan's lower half up a mountain 4 miles away, and that is where we had left Wolverine when he was climbing the mountain to retrieve his legs. Sadly, by the time Logan reaches the top, the Hulk is already there waiting for him. Bruce knows that Wolverine won't stop coming after him thanks to his healing factor, which is why he is going to eat one of his legs to ensure Wolverine can't regenerate it and follow him. Their banter, however, is soon broken up by a shield jet flying above them, and that is when Logan remembers about the backup Fury had promised. A mysterious woman leaps out of the jet and then lands beside the two of them with a huge explosion. When the snow settles down, Hulk and Logan watch in surprise as they watch Betty standing in front of them, transformed into She-Hulk. Ultimate X-Men number 75. Things are not what they seem. Let's catch up with the X-Men because a lot of issues have passed in between our story. Nightcrawler snapped, which forced Xavier to induce a psychic coma where Kurt still struggles with his battles to this day. As a result of this, Dazzler has quit the team. Wolverine is now a full-time X-Men and seems to have ironed out his grievances with Scott. Well, as much as he can. Rogue is back to her normal self now. There was a stint in between where she had absorbed Gambit's powers and retained them, but they have now gone away away after Gambit's death. Because of this, she can't make physical contact with anyone once again. It isn't a happy time for the X-Men, especially not Jean, who once again had episodes with the Phoenix Force thanks to Professor Xavier's latest love interest, Lilandra Naramani. Now let's get to the story. Jean sits in her room without any lights when we see Scott enter. It's Jean's birthday, and despite her protests, he has brought her a birthday gift. Jean keeps the gift aside without opening it because she feels that she shouldn't be celebrating her birthday in the current climate. At the same time, on the outside of the mansion, Professor X is returning from a night out at Lilandra's place, and waiting for him outside the mansion is none other than Quicksilver, who now works for S.H.I.E.L.D. He jokes about the professor spending a night with a woman he barely knows and then hands an ominous package from him. It's from Nick Fury, and before the professor can say anything, Quicksilver has already sped off. Charles reaches his study and contacts Nick Fury regarding the package he sent. The package contains a power-dampening bracelet that knocks out the wearer's nervous system instantly. It was originally designed for the Hulk, but has now been adapted to Jean's current condition with the Phoenix Force. The professor has decided to keep Jean in the X-Men, which has put the government as well as Nick Fury on the edge. They can't disagree with the professor's wishes, which is why the bracelet is a failsafe with a psychic trigger that can be used in case the worst happens. Charles goes on to tell Fury that he trusts Jean with his life, and that in case such a situation arises where even Charles isn't able to trigger the psychic switch, he trusts Jean enough to trigger it herself. Charles vouching for Jean is more than enough for Fury, who nods, then disconnects the call. Charles then uses his psychic link to call Jean to his room, while we see the rest of the X-Men enjoying video games in the living area. Bobby and Rogue are the ones currently playing the game, while Piotr enjoys the banter between the two. Kitty Pryde is too engrossed in her book when suddenly Rogue pushes Bobby and the PlayStation away, all because Bobby grazed her hand. She has gloves on, but the trauma of it all is too much for her. Kitty herself is too distracted as well, and when Piotr tries to talk to her about it, she simply dismisses him, saying that she needs to talk to the professor instead. Jean then goes to meet the professor, and the two of them talk about Charles's little night out. Charles then brings up the subject of the power dampening bracelet, and Jean agrees to wear it. Storm and Wolverine meanwhile are practicing in the danger room using a special program written by Aurora herself. A slight tumble sends Storm crashing down on Wolverine, and the two seem to share a rather spicy moment when they come face to face. However, Storm quickly cuts the tension by getting to her feet. Wolverine too ignores his feelings and decides to have another go at the training program custom created by Storm herself. The professor meanwhile is in the medical bay looking inside Kurt's mind, and he experiences all the hatred and rage Nightcrawler feels. Charles tries to approach Kurt in his mind space, but Nightcrawler refuses to accept the professor's help. The professor snaps out of it and holds Kurt's hand while promising to help him no matter what it takes. Suddenly there's a huge flash of blue light. Really very touching, Professor. I apologize in advance for having to do this, but you've got to die. It's Cable from the future, and he is pointing a futuristic weapon directly in the professor's face. The professor is quick on his feet. He sends Cable flying back using his mental powers, but the futuristic soldier quickly incapacitates him using a futuristic power dampener that attaches to the professor's forehead. The professor has lost all his powers, but before Cable can shoot him in the head, he is ambushed by Shadowcat, who has been searching for the professor all this while. She phases with Cable through the floor and manages to land a good hit on him. Sadly, Cable is prepared for her as well and stabs her with a large hypodermic needle directly in the stomach. Power dampener! Don't touch it. Don't remove it. It's the only thing keeping you from bleeding to death. Sorry, kiddo. But that is when Jean walks in and summons all the X-Men to the hangar using her psychic powers. Cable knows that Jean is a huge threat, which is why he uses another power dampener on her to knock her out. He is then ambushed by Piotr, but Cable has another trick up his sleeve for Colossus. He attaches a tiny vine to Colossus's knee that soon grows into a huge tree that wraps itself around Piotr's body, rendering him unable to move. Scott tries to use his optic blasts on Cable, but Cable simply deflects it using his metal arm. The resulting reflected ray hits the Blackbird, which goes up in a huge cloud of flames. This sends everyone flying away, leaving only Aurora and Wolverine to fight Cable. Cable makes quick work of Storm by using a power dampening bracelet similar to the one Jean started wearing, and then only Wolverine remains standing in his way. That was a very bad idea, bub. Wolverine leaps at Cable to cut him into pieces, but then staggers back while staring down at his chest. There are 3 huge slashes across his chest, just like the ones he carves into his foes. I don't pop the claws for just anyone. I've gone through 30 years without a healing factor to make me better than you could ever hope to be. It's over, bub. Cable has claws just like Wolverine, because he too is Logan, just from Earth 2107. Ultimate X-Men number 93, The True Apocalypse. After the confrontation with Cable in the previous comic, the X-Men believed that the Professor was dead. This forced Scott to disband the X-Men and turn the mansion into what he believes it was supposed to be, a school for mutants. During this time, another time traveler, Bishop, arrived in the current time and formed a new team of the X-Men. A few weeks ago, it was revealed that instead of killing him, Cable had actually abducted Charles Xavier and taken him into the future. In the future, Cable taught Charles to fight Apocalypse so that he could go back to the past and face the Harbinger of Death himself. During this time in the present day, Bishop secretly worked in tandem with Cable to ensure that every piece on the chessboard was laid out as they had planned to face the coming of Apocalypse. That time has finally come, and Apocalypse is now out to conquer the world. Charles Xavier returned from the future and faced Apocalypse, but sadly, despite all his training, the Professor lost, which forced Jean to beg the Phoenix Force for help before the Professor was called. Now, the Phoenix Force faces Apocalypse, and it remains to be seen if she is powerful enough to stop Apocalypse and save the Professor and the X-Men. The fight against Apocalypse is being fought by all of the mightiest forces that the X-Men could gather: SHIELD agents in exoskeleton suits, the Fantastic Four, and the Morlocks. Professor Xavier is about to be taken out by Apocalypse, but the Phoenix come to his aid and frees him from the grasp of Apocalypse in an instant using a loud explosion. Director Carol Danvers orders her men to stay out of the fight and instead help the injured people instead. They will retreat until the Phoenix has defeated Apocalypse or until Apocalypse has defeated the Phoenix. Storm checks on the Professor and then flies off to help the injured, while Scott holds back a badly bruised and battered Logan from joining the fight. The Phoenix and Apocalypse go head-to-head in a furious battle, and although physical fights are beneath the Phoenix, she will happily oblige this time. She blasts Apocalypse with fire, but sadly makes the mistake of holding back. This gives Apocalypse a chance to hit her with an uppercut, but holding back is a mistake the Phoenix won't make twice. She unleashes all her powers on Apocalypse, and slowly his metal exoskeleton begins melting away. Soon the Harbinger of Death is begging for mercy, and once his exoskeleton is no more, the Phoenix stops. Pathetic, your true form revealed. Inside the exoskeleton of Apocalypse is none other than Nathaniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister, of this Earth, and this leaves everyone baffled. Charles Xavier then tries to address the Phoenix as Jean, and she goes on to tell the Professor that she is both Jean and not Jean. Jean has now merged with Phoenix Force, and when Scott approaches her for answers, she tells him that she needs to go away. A part of her feels for Scott, cares for him, in fact cares for all the people around her, but this is not her purpose anymore. She is a god-level entity, and she is back on this plane of reality after spending billions of years away. There is much to be done. She then proclaims that there is much damage to be undone, damage that is the result of Charles Xavier's actions, because despite his potential, the Professor failed to act. We then see their surroundings and realize the entire district of Manhattan has been leveled in their recent fight. She goes on to blame Charles for holding the mutants back, and the little work he did manage to accomplish in all this time has now been ruined in their battle with Mr. Sinister. "What is it you expect me to do?" asks a scared and guilty Charles, and the Phoenix embraces his head and tells him, "I expect you to start over." Everything around the people present in the Phoenix's vicinity turns to nothingness, and once Charles comes to his senses, he is back in his study, dressed impeccably, sitting in his wheelchair, as though nothing ever happened. But it did, because the next second Scott rushes in screaming that he can't find Jean. The Professor tells him that he is correct, he can't sense Jean's signature anywhere on Earth, but that doesn't mean she is dead. So what, she transported all of us back here after she defeated Apocalypse? No, Scott. Jean did far more than that. We see that Charles is watching the news, and everything in the city, every piece of metal and fabric, has been restored as it used to be before their battle with Apocalypse. Jean did all this. She restored everything to the way it used to be. Over the course of the next couple of hours, the X-Men find out that they are the only ones who remember the battle. Anyone outside of the mansion, including Carol Danvers and Reed Richards, don't remember a thing. The Professor then summons all of the X-Men to the conference room and addresses them as one. He tells them that this is a miracle. They won a battle that they should have lost, and not only lived to tell them, but everything was put back together as it was. Jean has given them a second chance, and no matter where she may be, they can't let her down. The Professor doesn't understand the Phoenix fully, but he knows one thing. That entity is an agent of change, which is why they need to use their second chance at life wisely. We're going to help her, my X-Men. We're going to change the world. Ultimate X-Men number 94, Banshee. Between issue 93 and 94, a lot has happened. Professor Xavier has retreated to Muir Island to recuperate. During this time, the X-Men have regrouped and have been joined by new mutants as well. Surprisingly, Jean has also unexpectedly returned to the mansion with no memory of what happened after she had fused with the Phoenix Force. The X-Men, in the absence of the Professor, have decided to go back to the basics: studies, danger room sessions, training, and softball. But amidst all this recovery, a closely guarded secret of one of their fellow peers is about to be let out, a secret that could have catastrophic consequences for all of them. We see a flashback from Piotr's life when he was just a kid and used to dream about being Captain America. His father was a crude man who would keep a close eye on each part of Piotr's life and order him around to do anything and everything he wished. Piotr is from Serbia, and one day when he went to milk the cows, he was ambushed by Antal Spichkin and his men, who shot at him without even a single warning. Piotr instantly turned to metal, displaying his mutant abilities to protect the cow in the attack, and this confirmed Antal's suspicions. He then asked Piotr to come see him in Pushkin's if he wants to make something of his life. When Piotr asks what he is supposed to do about the dead cows, Antal tells him that he has managed to keep his mutation hidden from his father for so long, he will surely find a way to explain this as well. Right now, in the present time, the X-Men are busy enjoying a game of baseball while a lot of tensions are being discussed between them. Scott wants to talk about Jean's sudden return to the X-Men, but Scott is solely focused on the game. Kurt wants to apologize to Piotr because he called him a sinner for being gay. Piotr, however, still thinks of Kurt as a friend because he uses this opportunity to get Kurt out of the game. Things seem to be going good until an injured Bobby approaches them and then breaks into 1,000 pieces of ice. Bobby's dead. And then the Alpha Flight team approaches them. The team consists of Shaman, Vindicator, Snowbird, Sunfire, Sasquatch, Jubilee, and Aurora. Logan jumps into action because he knows this Canadian team of superheroes, but he is soon blasted into the air and out of sight by the Vindicator. X-Men soon jump into action, but each one of them soon realizes that they are clearly underpowered for these adversaries. Jubilee starts out by taking out Jean so that they can focus on the rest of the team. Then Firestar loses her battle against Sunfire while Snowbird makes quick work of Storm. Sasquatch takes down Rogue and Shaman takes care of Havoc. We then learn why the Alpha team is attacking the X-Men. They're here to retrieve Northstar because he is property of the Canadian government, but he is also Colossus's boyfriend, which is why he steps in promptly to save the love of his life. However, Vindicator uses his powers to distract Colossus, while Aurora uses her speed to kidnap Northstar. We then see Shaman evade Scott's optic blasts and break his ruby quartz glasses, forcing Scott to keep his eyes closed. The Alpha team soon boards their jet and is about to leave, but realize that they are being held back by someone. Piotr on the outside is using his sheer strength to keep the jet grounded. Sadly, despite Piotr's desperate efforts and blatant love for Northstar, Aurora steps out of the jet, frees it using her light speed, and escapes with her teammates before Piotr can do anything. Good news follows when Henry is able to put Bobby back together and help him heal, but Piotr is too focused on rescuing Northstar. He wants to leave this instant, but Scott advises him that they should train and plan an approach before facing Alpha Flight again. 5 mutants were able to take out 25 X-Men, and this should be impossible under any scenario. Wolverine then enters the medical bay and shows Scott the injector he was able to snatch off of Vindicator's costume. It's a delivery system for a drug called the Banshee. The drug contains fentanyl, mutant growth hormone, and dopamine. It grants humans superpowers and mutants tertiary powers. It is highly addictive, and this is what Alpha Flight was using to overpower the X-Men. Piotr storms out of the room without saying a word, and Jean notices this. She convinces Scott to let her take a look inside Piotr's mind, only to find the horrific vision of the time when Piotr's father discovered him in bed with another boy. Piotr was banished from the house, which forced him to ask Antal for help. But even the gangster turned Piotr away, because Piotr was too weak. He was barely able to lift his arms once he had turned his skin to metal. Piotr sobbed that he couldn't go back home because he didn't have one anymore, and that is when Jean realizes that Antal was the guy to get Piotr addicted to Banshee. Jean watches in horror as she sees a flood of memories since the teenage years of Piotr. He has been using Banshee all this while to enhance his strength. But this is when Colossus realizes that Jean has been probing his mind while she trains in the danger room, and he storms towards her. Storm holds the raging Colossus back as Jean goes on to tell everyone what she found, that Piotr is addicted to Banshee. Some of the X-Men denounce Piotr's choice while others side with him. Kurt especially understands Piotr's stance because unlike Logan and Jean, the two of them don't have tertiary mutant powers to keep them safe. The argument continues to escalate until Piotr takes the stand that he is going to use Banshee to rescue Northstar whether they like it or not. Firestar doesn't like this idea one bit. She says that this is a school and any kind of substance abuse will not be tolerated. Piotr will be expelled if he uses Banshee. Piotr lowers his head and walks out of the danger room. We then see him pack his bags, and despite all that has happened, he lovingly looks at the picture he and his fellow X-Men snapped a few months ago. But as he opens the hangar doors to take the jet, he is approached by Scott, who wants to help him to rescue Northstar. Piotr smiles and then reveals that it is not only Scott that wants to help him, he has his own little team of X-Men assembled for the mission. We then see Nightcrawler, Angel, Rogue, and Dazzler reveal themselves. All of them have consumed Banshee and are now sporting their overpowered mutant versions. Ultimate X-Men at number 95. Somebody has to die. This issue starts with a flashback from Scott's past. He used to be a weak orphan and he is currently being bullied in school. Scott doesn't fight back and instead slumps to the ground after a few punches. His bullies are about to beat him up again, but they soon stop when they spot Scott losing control of his bladder. Scott becomes the joke of the school and storms home and shuts himself in his room. His foster father, Noah, tries to talk to him, but Scott keeps screaming at him to leave him alone until all hell breaks loose. This is the first time Scott manifests his mutant powers and in turn ends up killing his foster parents. He is snapped back to reality by Colossus, who can see that Scott had been lost in a tough memory. Piotr sympathizes and takes Scott into the living room. We see that all of them have gathered at Piotr's old home in Serbia, and Piotr has arranged for them to buy more Banshee. Scott wants to go with him for the drug deal, but Piotr says that he is the only one allowed to deal with the dealer. We then see Piotr step out of the house and put on a blindfold so that he can't see the dealer. The dealer is using a teleporter and throughout all these years has always kept his identity hidden. We then see Piotr exchange money for 12 vials of Banshee, and before you know it, the dealer has teleported out of there, even before Scott can get a peek at him. In a bizarre turn of events, Rogue kisses Scott because she can now thanks to Banshee. She no longer siphons the life energy of people when she physically touches them. We then see Piotr enter the home with the 12 vials and offer one to Scott. Scott injects himself with Banshee and then establishes a psychic connection with Jean. Jean is on her computer testing each of the X-Men for the use of Banshee when she allows Charles Xavier to join their telepathic link. Turns out Scott is playing the role of a double agent. He is helping Piotr and the rest of the group, but also helping Jean and the Professor find the supplier of Banshee. Jean's eyes widen with horror as she finds the first X-Man who has been tested positive for Banshee. It's Wolverine. In a fit of rage, Wolverine breaks Jean's expensive computer because he can't believe he could have tested positive. Jean tells him that they believe that he isn't currently using Banshee, but he could have used it in the past. In his past that he has no memory of. Logan vows revenge on anyone that might have injected him with Banshee. We now travel north to the Department H headquarters, 50 miles outside of Montreal, Canada. Northstar's screams echo throughout the facility, and this has been making Jubilee anxious. She doubts whether they are doing the right thing because all of them have been hyped up on Banshee for so long. Jubilee has even forgotten what Sasquatch looked like before taking the drug. Thankfully, Rain Sinclair transforms back to her regular self to put Jubilee's mind at ease, and this emboldens Jubilee. She approaches Vindicator to remove his mask, but he swats her away and breaks her finger while doing so. When Jubilee screams at him for being inconsiderate and violent, Vindicator says, "You don't need fingers to cast your fireworks." Suddenly, the wall beside them vanishes into thin air and they are attacked by Piotr and the rest of the X-Men. Hyped up on Banshee, Piotr makes quick work of Shaman while Dazzler takes care of Aurora. Angel incapacitates Snowbird, leaving Kurt to deal with Sasquatch. Kurt doesn't know the extent of his amplified powers because he ends up teleporting Sasquatch's right arm far away from the facility. Kurt panics, and this gives Vindicator the opportunity to ambush him. Rogue intervenes and uses her powers to siphon Vindicator's life force, but in doing so, she learns his dirty little secret. Rogue recoils in horror, and before she can tell anything to anyone, Vindicator attacks her with all his force, specifically with the intent to kill her. Scott has to step in, but Vindicator is able to keep his optic blasts at bay quite easily. Piotr then holds Vindicator by the throat and demands the location of Northstar. "Science lab, north of the building." In sheer desperation, Piotr lets go of Vindicator and rushes towards Northstar's location. Scott lies on the ground calling out to Piotr as Vindicator again begins his relentless assault on Rogue and him. It is then revealed that Scott faked taking the Banshee dose back at home, but now he has no choice. He takes out the Banshee vial and injects the drug into his system. Scott writhes in pain for a second, but after that, it's all gone. Scott doesn't need his glasses anymore. He feels more powerful and more in control than ever. He feels that this is who he was supposed to be all along. Scott is more powerful than ever, and it only takes minutes for him to take down the entire Alpha Flight team. In the north of the facility, however, things are looking bad for Piotr and Northstar. Northstar has been hooked up to some kind of drug-delivering contraption, and Alpha Flight has been pumping him up with Banshee all day. When Piotr frees Northstar, he can't stop vibrating. He can't control his powers, and Piotr realizes that his boyfriend is overdosing. Piotr desperately asks Northstar to try and control his powers, but his vibrating starts bringing the entire facility down. On the other side of the building, Scott knows that this earthquake is caused by Northstar, and he rushes towards the science lab. By the time he reaches the lab, the earthquake has stopped, and once he enters the lab, he realizes why that is. Piotr was forced to kill his boyfriend to protect them all. Tears stream down Piotr's face as he says, "He wouldn't stop shaking. He wouldn't stop shaking. He wouldn't stop. He wouldn't. He wouldn't." The bloodied, lifeless body of Northstar lies in Piotr's arms as Scott tries to come to terms with what he is witnessing. Ultimate X-Men number 96, The Addiction. Jean and Wolverine have been trying to track down Banshee dealers to find the source of the drug, but a huge question still looms over their heads. Where did Jean go when she was the Phoenix after defeating Apocalypse, aka Mr. Sinister? And more importantly, why was she so much more invested in this? We begin with a flashback of 2 months ago when Phoenix left Earth and traveled to the farthest ends of the universe. On the way there, she was seen by numerous alien civilizations until she was finally stopped dead in her tracks by a silver surfer representing the Watchers. The surfer told her about all the havoc she has caused around the universe. Wars are being waged in her name, races are committing suicide in her honor. This all has to stop, and it has to stop now. We then learn that the Phoenix has been looking for something, and she has been looking for heaven. There's a glint of Jean inside the Phoenix as she says the word heaven. Back in the present day, contrary to what the Phoenix wanted, Jean is putting her fellow X-Men through hell in the danger room on a daily basis. They train for 6 hours, all because Jean is hell-bent on taking down the Banshee trade. She's preparing the X-Men for the worst, but during today's training sessions, she enters a trance because she is contacted by Kurt. Nightcrawler takes her astral projection form from Hammer Bay in Genosha, where Piotr and the rest of the X-Men that have been using Banshee are fighting the Acolytes to steal a shipment of Banshee. Kurt confesses that he is concerned about all of them because they have become addicted to Banshee. The drug has made them all go crazy with power, and he is afraid to say something to Piotr or Scott. Jean then confronts Scott, but he is completely deluded. He tells Jean that this is who he was supposed to be, and that there is no way he is going to give up Banshee now. When Jean protests, Scott uses his optic blast to blast Jean's astral projection, which sends her body in the danger room flying away as well. Thankfully, Beast catches her body in the nick of time, and she tells everyone that they need to stop Scott and the rest of them, or else they will end up killing themselves. On the other side of the city in the Bronx, Spider-Man and Kitty Pryde are busy fighting men hyped up on Banshee when Wolverine comes in and saves the day. He wants Parker's help to analyze his blood for traces of Banshee and why he is testing positive. He can't go to Banner or Reed Richards because they would hand him over to S.H.I.E.L.D. Peter analyzes Wolverine's blood and discovers that Logan is testing positive for Banshee because his blood is Banshee. The drug is based on Wolverine's DNA, and someone is using that for the entire drug trade. Wolverine vows revenge on whoever is using his DNA to create Banshee when suddenly he hears Jean's voice summoning him back to the mansion. They are going to save their friends and put an end to the Banshee trade. Back in Siberia, we see Pyotr and the rest of them living like addicts, hiding in shacks while eating any wildlife that they can find. Scott confronts Pyotr about their current condition and how the batch of Banshee that they stole from the Acolytes isn't pure. He then tells Pyotr about seeing Jean's astral projection and how she is hell-bent on stopping them and the Banshee trade. During this conversation, he ends up confessing that he was acting as a double agent, which makes Pyotr attack him. Scott and Pyotr begin fighting, but a moment later, Colossus simply faints and falls to the ground thanks to Iceman. The next second, a huge fight breaks out between the two groups. Scott aims for Jean while Wolverine takes on Dazzler. Kurt goes up against Firestar while Beast faces off against Angel. Things soon turn into chaos until Jean is pinned to the ground by Colossus, which forces her to lose control over her emotions, and the Phoenix Force takes over. Jean's entire surroundings are engulfed in flames, and she then gets a vision of her dead father walking towards her. Jean wanted to reach heaven because she wanted to bring her father back to life. It wasn't Phoenix traveling to the ends of the universe, but Jean. She was the one looking for heaven. Her father makes her understand that he wasn't a good father and he doesn't deserve to come back. He was negligent and always occupied with work while ignoring her constantly. She has already found a loving father in Charles Xavier, and that is how things should be. He then asks her to focus on her friends instead, because if she doesn't go back, everyone's life is in danger. A fainted Jean falls out of the fire vortex created by her and is caught in the nick of time by Pyotr. But Logan has already given in to one of his rages. He tells Pyotr that the entire Banshee addiction is his fault, and then begins slicing at his body. Once Logan is done, Pyotr stands there with his metal heart pumping in his hands. "What have you done, Logan?" Ultimatum number 4, and so the end begins. Since the last time we caught up with Wolverine, a lot has happened. Magneto has been freed from his plastic prison by Forge and Mystique, and the source of the Banshee was discovered to be none other than Moira MacTaggart. Charles Xavier was recovering on Muir Island when Wolverine attacked the base after he learned that Moira was responsible for producing Banshee. The two fought, and Moira was discovered to have the hidden mutant ability of Sonic Scream. This destroyed the facility, and Moira was seemingly killed off in it. Quicksilver showed up to Muir Islands after some time and discovered Moira emerging from the ruins. It was then implied that Moira has joined Quicksilver in his nefarious schemes. Magneto is now holed up back in his citadel in the Arctic Circle and has killed millions around the world. Not only has he killed people, he has also managed to snap Charles's neck, kill off Thor, Wasp, and even Dazzler. Only a few heroes remain standing in his way, but Magneto has a destructive plan to end all life on Earth. Spider-Man and Hulk are in Soho, New York City, at Doctor Strange's home. Hulk is smashing things left and right while Peter is desperately trying to get him to stop in case any of the magical artifacts get damaged. Sadly, this is exactly what happens, and after a bright flash of white light, Spider-Man is dead. Only his tattered mask remains as it falls to the floor, and Kitty Pryde picks it up in what remains of Doctor Strange's sanctum. This destruction, however, has freed Dormammu, who is using Johnny Storm's powers to amplify his own. Dr. Strange tries to stop him, but after a quick battle, Dormammu uses the Doctor's own robes to wrap him up and crush him. Sue Storm and the Thing then face Dormammu, while on the other side of town, the Hulk is being tormented by the military. Scott and Storm soon intervene to stop the army and let Hulk do its thing, and we then learn that everything is now up to Logan. Wolverine faces down Hulk, and thankfully Hulk remembers him. Logan convinces Hulk to help them, and with the help of Jean and the X-Men, they quickly get to work alongside the Ultimates. We now switch to the Supreme Power universe, where Nick Fury has spent the last 5 years. He is at the White House, but when he gets out of his car, he spots Reed Richards, Doctor Doom, Arcana, and Zarda from his own universe approach him. They are here to recruit Nick Fury to help them stop Magneto in their own universe, because Magneto has reversed the Earth's poles, and this will annihilate all life in the coming days. Nick Fury agrees to help, but his only condition is that Doom will reveal the part he had to play in this entire mess. Turns out, Dr. Doom was the one who murdered Erik's daughter, the Scarlet Witch, which now leads to the destruction of the world. Zarda and Reed lash out at Doom, but are halted by Fury in the nick of time. Pun intended. We then switch back to our own universe, where Logan is wishing Kitty Pryde one last goodbye. With Spider-Man dead, he is leaving her with Bobby so that the two young X-Men can take care of each other. He also hands Kitty a box as a parting gift, which is only meant to be opened in case Logan doesn't come back. We now head to the Arctic Circle, where a relaxing Magneto is ambushed by Angel and punched in the face. He is raging because of Dazzler's death, but Sabretooth makes quick work of Angel. He tears off one of Angel's wings using his teeth and then crushes his neck underfoot. Angel is dead too, but before Sabretooth can revel in his victory for too long, he is shot in the eye by Hawkeye. Magneto then goes up against Valkyrie, who ends up slicing off his right arm in a bid to get Thor's hammer. But this is as far as she can go, because Magneto then uses Valkyrie's own sword to slice her throat. Captain America then jumps in and attacks Magneto, but he is quickly trapped under falling debris. A one-armed Magneto then flies towards the center of the Citadel, where the remaining X-Men, along with the Ultimates, are waiting to face him. Ultimatum number 5. The Insignificant End. This issue opens up on a raging Wolverine who has now promised himself that he's going to kill Magneto, even if it means the end of his life. Logan deep down knows that because he wasn't ready to sacrifice himself before, it's the reason why he couldn't defeat Magneto in the past. He launches himself at Magneto and manages to land a few good hits until Magneto gathers himself and sends Logan flying away. He then controls Iron Man's costume and Scott's visor to direct both their powers directly at Wolverine. This disintegrates Logan into nothing but a pile of bones and flesh, but even then a bit of life still remains in Wolverine's body. Magneto drops Logan's tattered body to the floor and then uses his powers to tear the adamantium off of his skeleton and then blast him into nothing but dust. Under the Citadel, Hulk and Colossus are busy tearing apart machinery to plummet it into the ground when they are ambushed by Mystique wielding a flamethrower. Fire doesn't really affect Colossus and Hulk, which is why Sabretooth plants a bomb and escapes with Mystique in the nick of time. It seems that the two of them no longer answer to Magneto. Up in the Citadel, we see that Logan managed to stab Erik in the chest before he was killed off. A bleeding Magneto lies on the floor when he is approached by Nick Fury. Fury uses Jean's powers to show Erik the dirtiest secret he has been hiding all these years. Mutants aren't an evolutionary step in humanity's race to perfection. They were created in a lab by a mad scientist who thought he could change the world by creating super soldiers. Erik's entire agenda is based on a lie. Erik breaks down and after some much-needed reprimanding from Reed Richards, uses his powers to fix the Earth's poles. But that is as far as the road goes for Erik. Scott steps in, remembers how Erik snapped the professor's neck, and then blows off Magneto's head using his optic blast. It's all over. The remaining X-Men and the Ultimates leave the Citadel before it crashes into the Arctic below, and we see Wolverine's last remaining claw sink to the bottom of the ocean. 8 days later, Scott has decided to follow in the footsteps of his mentor and to fight for peace between humans and mutants. He is addressing the public outside the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., and calling for peace between the two races. He also discloses the bill proposed in the Congress that will be voted on today. The bill proposes that either mutants around the world will submit to their governments or they will be hunted by sentinels. He is flanked by Aurora and Piotr when suddenly a bullet whizzes through the air and hits Scott directly in the head. Cyclops is dead. Everybody panics while Rogue tries to hold Jean back so that she isn't arrested. On the stage, however, Aurora and Piotr are detained by acting director Danvers. We then see a silver streak whiz through the crowd. In Castle Van Dam in Latveria, the Thing arrives at Dr. Doom's lair where he is holding Namor captive in a water tank. The Thing is here for revenge because he knows Reed Richards isn't a man made for killing, but he is. Ben holds Dr. Doom's head in his right hand and crushes it to a pulp. The next day, we head to Wundagore, the home of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch's mother. Inside, we see a battered Quicksilver dressed in his father's clothes, ready to take up his mantle and continue Magneto's legacy. He is joined by Sabretooth and Mystique, and this is why the two of them had abandoned Magneto when all was lost. The comic ends with a page in memoriam of all those who died in this chaos, including the millions of people that lost their lives in New York City, Latveria, London, Wakanda, the Savage Land, and around the world.